The outlaws didn't know they were already dead men. They saw an easy target, a quiet bartender who never spoke, never fought back, who just wiped down glasses while the world burned around him. They laughed, they mocked, they pushed. What they didn't see was the graveyard of names buried beneath Cole Mercer's silence, or the legend he'd spent 5 years trying to forget. By the time they realized their mistake, 3 guns were already drawn. By the time the fastest among them blinked, Cole's revolver was back in its holster. The bodies hadn't even hit the floor yet. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And stick around until the end, because what happens in that final showdown will change everything you think you know about Cole Mercer. Hit that like button and let me know your thoughts as we go. The wind carried dust and the smell of coming rain through Whisper Ridge, a town that existed because someone had to draw a line somewhere between civilization and the wild, nothing beyond. It wasn't much. A main street of sun-bleached wood, a general store that charged too much, a livery stable that smelled like it sounded, and the Silver Dollar Saloon, where men came to forget they were living in a place God might have sketched out, and then decided wasn't worth finishing. Cole Mercer stood behind that bar like a piece of furniture that happened to have a pulse. He was tall, but didn't use the height, broad-shouldered but kept them rolled forward, had hands that could have strangled a man, but only ever used them to pour whiskey and wipe rings off wood that had seen better decades. His face was the kind you'd forget 5 minutes after seeing it. Not ugly, not handsome, just there. Brown hair that needed cutting, eyes that were some color between gray and nothing, a jaw that hadn't smiled in so long the muscles probably forgot how. "Another," grunted Thomas Ridley, shoving his glass across the bar hard enough that it should have broken. Cole picked it up without a word, poured 2 fingers of rotgut that tasted like the devil's bathwater, and slid it back. Didn't meet Ridley's eyes. Never did. "You ever gonna talk, Mercer?" Ridley's voice had that edge men get when they're 3 drinks past sober and looking for something to prod. "Were you planning to spend your whole life as a goddamn mute?" Cole wiped the bar. The rag made wet circles on scarred wood. "I'm talking to you, boy." Cole was 32, nobody's boy. But he just kept wiping, kept his face blank as a new grave marker. Ridley snorted, grabbed his glass, and turned back to the card game, where he was losing money he didn't have to men who'd collect in blood if the coin ran out. "Useless son of a bitch," he muttered, but he muttered it quiet, the way men do when they're not quite drunk enough to commit to the insult. The saloon had 12 people in it, which was 11 more than it needed and 1 less than it could hold before the air got too thick to breathe. Poker game in the corner. 2 drifters at separate tables pretending they weren't sizing each other up. Old man Hewitt asleep against the wall, drooling into his beard. And Sarah Connolly, the only woman in the place, sitting near the window like she was waiting for something better to walk through the door. She caught Cole's eye and offered a smile that was more tired than warm. "Coffee, Cole?" He nodded, turned to the pot that was always on, always burnt, and poured her a cup that looked like it could strip paint. She took it anyway. Sarah was the school teacher, which meant she was overworked, underpaid, and the only person in Whisper Ridge who'd figured out that silence wasn't the same thing as stupid. "You hear the news?" she asked, quiet enough that it was just for him. Cole's hand paused on the coffee pot for half a second. Then he finished pouring and set it down. "Grayson Black's gang," Sarah continued, wrapping both hands around the cup like it was winter instead of the ass end of summer. "They hit Broken Creek 2 days ago. Killed the sheriff, burned half the town. They're moving north." North meant here. North meant Whisper Ridge was a dot on a map between where the Grayson Black gang was and wherever they were going, which meant the town was about to become a grease stain in their path. Cole set the pot back on the stove and went back to wiping the bar. "You don't seem worried," Sarah said. He wasn't. Worry was an emotion, and Cole had filed those down to nothing years ago. What he felt instead was something older, colder, a kind of recognition, like seeing storm clouds on the horizon and knowing exactly how hard the rain would hit because you'd stood in that rain before and barely made it out. The door banged open hard enough to make everyone jump except Cole. Deputy Marshal Frank Hastings stood in the doorway, his badge catching the last of the daylight like it was trying to remind everyone it meant something. Frank was 53, 20 pounds too heavy, and had a mustache that looked like a dead animal was nesting on his upper lip. Good man, though. honest, which in a place like Whisper Ridge was either a virtue or a death sentence, depending on the day. "They're coming," Frank said. And the saloon went quiet in that way that means everyone was already listening, but now they were listening hard. "Who's coming?" asked Ridley, but his voice said he already knew. "Grayson Black, his whole damn crew. Outrider spotted them 20 miles south, moving fast." Frank stepped inside, and Cole could see the sweat on his face wasn't from the heat. "They'll be here by nightfall." Someone dropped a card. The slap of it hitting the table sounded like a gunshot. "How many?" This from one of the drifters, a lean man with a scar that split his eyebrow. 15, maybe 20. Frank pulled off his hat, ran a hand through hair that was more gone than there. "We've got me. Cole, if he'll fight." "He won't," Ridley interrupted. "Bartender ain't got the stones." Cole kept wiping the bar. Same spot, over and over. "Maybe 3, 4 men who can handle a rifle without shooting their own feet off," Frank finished. He looked at Cole when he said it, something in his eyes that might have been hope or might have been pleading. "We could use you, Mercer." Cole set down the rag, picked up a glass, held it to the light to check for spots. Found one. Started polishing. "Goddamn coward," Ridley spat. Sarah stood up fast enough that her chair scraped. "Tom, shut your mouth." "Why? It's true. We got killers riding in here and he's gonna hide behind his bar and polish his pretty glasses while the rest of us die." Cole set down the glass. Picked up another one. The whiskey bottle in his peripheral vision had a label he'd memorized. Red Creek Bourbon, 1874. A bad year for everything except forgetting. Frank sighed, the kind of sigh that carries the weight of knowing you're about to lose an argument you can't afford to lose. "We're gonna fortify the town best we can. Board up windows. Get the women and children to the church basement. If you've got guns, load them. If you've got sense, use it." He settled his hat back on his head. "And if you've got any final words to say to anyone, say them now." He left. The door swung shut behind him with a sound like a coffin closing. The saloon stayed quiet for about 10 seconds before it exploded into exactly the kind of chaos you'd expect from men who just found out they were probably going to die before breakfast. "We should run," said one of the poker players. "Where?" shot back another. "Black's gang is south. Nearest town north is 40 miles through territory that'll kill you just as dead." "We could hide." "Where? You gonna dig a hole and pull the dirt in after you?" "Maybe we negotiate." "You can't negotiate with Grayson Black. Man's got a list of burned towns longer than your arm." Cole listened to all of it while he worked. Washed glasses, dried them, set them on the shelf in perfect rows. His hands were steady. They were always steady. It was the only thing about him that hadn't changed in 5 years. Sarah came up to the bar, set down her empty cup. "You really not going to help?" He looked at her, really looked, which was something he almost never did. She had brown eyes that were too smart for a town like this, and hair she kept tied back like she was fighting a war against practicality. 31 years old. Came to Whisper Ridge because she thought she could make a difference. Hadn't figured out yet that some places were past saving. "Please," she said, and her voice cracked just enough to show the fear underneath. Cole wanted to tell her to run. Wanted to tell her that if she left right now, took a horse and rode west instead of north, she might make it to somewhere that mattered. Wanted to tell her that staying here was suicide and helping was worse because it would just get her killed slower. But he didn't say any of that. Because Cole Mercer didn't say much of anything. He just picked up her cup, rinsed it out, set it to dry. Sarah's face did something complicated. Disappointment, anger, resignation all mixing together. And then she turned and walked out. The saloon emptied after that. Men going home to kiss wives they'd been ignoring or to load rifles they'd never fired. Within 20 minutes, it was just Cole in the silence, which was how he preferred it. He locked the front door, drew the curtains, and started his closing routine. Counted the till. $43 and some change, which was more than yesterday and less than it should have been. Swept the floor, stacked the chairs, blew out most of the lamps, leaving just one burning behind the bar. Then he stood there in the near dark, his reflection ghosting in the mirror behind the whiskey bottles, and let himself remember. 5 years ago, Cole Mercer had been someone else. Someone with a different name and a reputation that made strong men cross the street. He'd been fast, not just fast, the fastest. And everyone from Abilene to El Paso knew it. He'd walked into rooms and watched them go quiet, had killed 17 men in fair fights and 3 more that weren't fair but needed killing anyway. Had been feared and respected and so goddamn alone that some nights he couldn't tell the difference between being alive and being a ghost who just hadn't noticed he was dead yet. Then came Carson's Bend, the job that was supposed to be simple, the setup he should have seen coming, the bullet that missed his heart by 2 inches, and the 15-year-old kid who'd fired it because someone told him Cole Mercer had killed his father. Except Cole hadn't. Wrong man, wrong town, wrong everything. But the kid didn't know that, and by the time Cole had talked him down, 2 more people were dead and the whole thing was a mess that no amount of explaining could fix. So he'd left, rode until his horse died, walked until he found Whisper Ridge, and decided that being nobody was better than being the kind of somebody that got kids killed. 5 years of silence, 5 years of routine, 5 years of being so boring that people forgot he was there. And now Grayson Black was coming, and Cole could feel the old thing inside him waking up like a dog that smelled blood on the wind. He pulled a bottle from under the bar, not the rot gut he served customers, but the good stuff he kept hidden, and poured himself 2 fingers. Drank it slow. Let the burn ground him. Outside he could hear hammering, men boarding up windows, families loading wagons, someone crying, the sounds of a town that knew it was about to be tested and wasn't sure it would pass. Cole finished his drink, set down the glass, and looked at his hands. Steady. Always steady. He wondered if they'd shake when it started, if the rust of 5 years had set in too deep, if the thing he used to be was even still there, or if he'd buried it so deep that digging it up would kill him faster than any bullet. The answer came at 9:47 p.m. when the first gunshot cracked through the night like the world splitting open. Cole was in the back room going through inventory he didn't need to count when he heard it. Single shot. Rifle, probably a Winchester. 3 seconds of silence. Then shouting. Then more shots, rapid fire, the sound of men who were scared and shooting at shadows. He walked to the front window, moved the curtain aside just enough to see. Main Street was lit up by torches and muzzle flashes. 20 riders, maybe more, coming in fast and loud. They weren't trying to be subtle. Grayson Black didn't do subtle. He did overwhelming force and maximum terror, and right now he was delivering both. Cole watched Frank Hastings step into the street with his rifle raised. Brave, stupid, both. "This is Deputy Marshal Frank Hastings," Frank shouted, his voice carrying over the chaos. "You men turn around right now, or—" The gunshot cut him off. Frank spun, clutched his shoulder, went down hard. Cole felt something shift in his chest. Not anger. Anger was too hot, too wild. This was colder, sharper. The feeling you get when you've been running from something for so long that you forget it's still chasing you until it shows up at your door with a gun and a smile. More shots. Someone screamed. Cole saw Mrs. Patterson, the baker's wife, 63 years old, made a sourdough that could save your soul, running for cover. Saw one of the riders aim at her for sport. Cole's hand moved to his hip before his brain caught up. Found nothing but air because he hadn't worn a gun in 5 years. The rider fired. Mrs. Patterson stumbled, fell, didn't get up. And something in Cole Mercer, something he'd thought was dead and buried, cracked wide open. He moved fast. Not the supernatural speed of legend, but the economical movement of someone who'd done this dance before. Crossed the saloon in 4 steps, reached under the far end of the bar where he kept the false panel. Pulled it open. Inside was a gun belt he'd oiled once a month for 5 years, even though he swore he'd never wear it again. The leather was dark, worn smooth in all the right places. The holster sat low on the right hip, canted forward just slightly. And the gun. The gun was a Colt single action army, .45 caliber, with custom grips made from black walnut. Someone had carved initials into the base of the handle. CM. Not Cole Mercer. The other name. The real one. He strapped it on, and it fit like a memory. The weight of it was wrong at first, then right, then as natural as breathing. He drew once, just to check. The motion was smooth, slower than it used to be, but still faster than anyone had a right to be. He thumbed the hammer, felt the mechanism click through its rotation, then holstered it again. Outside, the shooting had stopped. Cole heard laughter instead, which was worse. Heard someone begging, heard the wet sound of fists hitting flesh. He checked the cylinder. 6 rounds. Grabbed a box of ammunition from the same hidden compartment, shoved it in his coat pocket, started for the door, stopped. His reflection stared back at him from the mirror behind the bar. For the first time in 5 years, he looked himself in the eye and saw something other than a man trying to disappear. "Don't do this," he said out loud, his voice rough from disuse. But his hand was already on the door handle. "You spent 5 years walking away from this." The handle turned. "It won't change anything, won't bring anyone back." The door opened. "You'll just be him again." Cole stepped into the night. The street was chaos, buildings burning, people screaming. The Grayson Black gang had spread out, taking control of the town like it was a game they'd played before and knew all the rules to. They were efficient about it, some securing the perimeter, others rounding up civilians, a few just destroying things because they could. And in the center of it all, sitting on a black horse like he was posing for a painting, was Grayson Black himself. He was younger than Cole expected, maybe 35, with the kind of face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so hollow. Dark hair, darker eyes, and a smile that suggested he knew the punchline to a joke everyone else was dying to hear. 2 pistols on his hips, a rifle across his saddle, and the posture of a man who'd never been told no and didn't plan to start now. "Well, well," Grayson said, his voice carrying over the crackling of flames. "Looks like we found ourselves a proper town. Almost makes me feel bad about what we're going to do to it." He paused, scanned the gathered crowd. "Almost?" His men laughed. 23 of them by Cole's count, all armed, all wearing the kind of casual violence that comes from too many easy wins. Cole stayed in the shadows outside the saloon, watching, calculating. The old instincts coming back like muscle memory. Frank Hastings was on his knees in the dirt, blood soaking through his shirt. Sarah was being held by 2 men near the general store, her face pale but defiant. Tom Ridley was face down, unmoving. Others scattered throughout the street, some hurt, some just terrified. "Now," Grayson continued, swinging down from his horse with theatrical flair, "we're going to make this simple. You got 2 choices, cooperate and most of you live, or fight and all of you die. I'm easy either way, but I suspect you folks might have a preference." He walked to where Frank was kneeling, crouched down so they were eye level. "You the law here?" Frank spat blood. "Deputy Marshal." "Deputy," Grayson grinned. "Where's the actual marshal?" "Dead, 3 years ago." "And they gave the job to you?" Grayson stood, brushed dirt off his pants. Town must be desperate. He pulled one of his pistols, checked the cylinder casually. "Here's what's going to happen, Deputy. You're going to tell me where you keep the town's money, the bank's safe if you got one, and anything else worth taking. Then we're going to take it. Then we're going to have some fun. Then we're going to leave. And if you're real lucky, you'll still be breathing when we do." "Go to hell," Frank said. Grayson shot him. Not to kill. In the leg, precise, professional. Frank screamed and went down sideways. Grayson holstered his pistol, bored already. "Anyone else want to be a hero?" He looked around at the crowd. "No? Good. You're learning." That's when Cole stepped into the light. He didn't announce himself. Didn't say anything. Just walked out of the shadows and into the street, his duster settling around him like a curtain falling. 23 heads turned. 23 hands moved toward guns. Cole stopped about 40 feet from Grayson, his stance easy, relaxed. His right hand hung loose near his holster, but not touching it. Not yet. Grayson tilted his head, studying this new variable. "Well, hello there, you the town drunk, stumbling out for one last look at the stars?" Cole didn't answer. "Strong silent type. I like it." Grayson took a few steps forward. "But you're making a mistake, friend. See, we've got this whole thing under control, and you walking out here is just going to get you killed. So why don't you turn around, head back to whatever hole you crawled out of, and we'll pretend this didn't happen." Cole's eyes swept the street, counted guns, calculated angles, measured distances, his brain doing math his body already knew the answers to. "He's the bartender," someone in the crowd called out. One of Grayson's men, Cole recognized him now, had served him drinks 2 weeks ago, never caught the name. "Works at the saloon. Don't talk, don't fight, just pours drinks and keeps his head down." "Bartender?" Grayson laughed. and his men joined in. "Oh, this is perfect. What are you going to do, bartender? Throw a bottle at us? Mix us a drink so bad we die of shame?" More laughter. They thought this was funny, thought Cole was a joke that walked into the punchline. Cole watched Grayson's right hand, watched how it rested on his pistol grip, index finger tapping a rhythm against the metal, watched his weight distribution, slightly forward on the balls of his feet, watched his eyes, the pupils dilated, the slight tremor that suggested either drugs or adrenaline or both. Fast, Cole judged. Not the fastest, but fast enough to matter. Confident, overconfident, used to winning. "Tell you what," Grayson said, pulling his pistol again. "I'm going to count to 3. You run, maybe I shoot you in the back, maybe I don't. You stay, I definitely shoot you in the face. Your choice, bartender." Cole's hand shifted. Not much, just enough to change the angle by a degree. 1? Sarah was crying now. Cole could hear it from here, could hear her saying, "Please don't," to no one who was listening. 2. Frank Hastings groaned, trying to push himself up, failing. Cole drew. The motion was pure economy. No wasted movement, no hesitation, just hand to gun to aim to fire in a sequence so fast it looked like one continuous blur. The Colt cleared leather, came up level, and barked once. Grayson's gun flew from his hand, spinning end over end through the air. The bullet had hit it dead center, punching through the cylinder and rendering it useless. Grayson stood there, arms still extended, staring at his empty hand like he couldn't quite process what just happened. The street went silent. Cole's gun was already holstered again, so fast that some of the men weren't even sure he'd drawn. The whole thing, draw, aim, fire, holster, had taken less than a second. "What the?" Grayson started. Then the night exploded. 3 of Grayson's men went for their guns simultaneously. Cole's hand moved again, faster this time, and 3 shots cracked out in rapid succession. 3 guns went flying. The men yelped, clutching hands that were numb from the impact but miraculously uninjured. Cole hadn't killed anyone. He'd just disarmed them with the kind of precision that shouldn't exist outside of fairy tales. "Who the hell are you?" Grayson backed up a step, and for the first time since riding into town, he looked uncertain. Cole said nothing, just stood there, ready, waiting for the next person to make a mistake. 4 more men drew. Cole's gun sang 4 more times, and 4 more weapons went clattering into the dirt. "Shoot him!" Grayson screamed. "All of you, shoot him now!" The remaining men opened fire in a ragged volley. 15 shots, maybe 20, all aimed at the spot where Cole had been standing. Except he wasn't there anymore. He'd moved, not running, just shifting left with the kind of economy that comes from knowing exactly how much space a bullet needs and making sure you're not in it. Return fire came from a different angle, and suddenly 3 more men were disarmed. One was screaming about his shoulder, and the rest were diving for cover. Cole reloaded while moving, his hands performing the complex choreography without conscious thought. Empty shells ejected, fresh rounds slotted home, cylinder closed with a snap that sounded like bones breaking. "Get to the saloon!" someone yelled. Not one of Grayson's men, one of the townspeople, taking advantage of the chaos to scramble for cover. Cole saw Sarah running, saw Frank being dragged by 2 men towards safety, saw the crowd dispersing like water finding cracks, flowing away from the violence and toward anything that looked like shelter. Good. Fewer variables. Grayson had taken cover behind a horse trough, his face a mask of rage and confusion. $20,000, he shouted. $20,000 to whoever kills that son of a bitch. Money changed calculations. Men who'd been backing off suddenly found their courage again, or at least found their greed. They came at Cole from 3 sides, coordinated now, professional. These weren't thugs. These were killers. And they knew their business. Cole moved like water. A shot from his left. He was already right, returning fire that clipped a man's gun hand and sent him stumbling. Motion from behind. Cole spun, dropped to one knee, fired low, took out a kneecap. The man went down screaming. Someone else from the right, too close. Cole's gun came up and around, catching the barrel of the incoming weapon and shoving it skyward. The shot went wild. Cole's elbow came back, caught the man in the throat, dropped him choking. All of this in the space of 5 seconds. But there were too many. Cole was fast, impossibly fast, But physics was still physics, and bullets still traveled at speed, and he couldn't be everywhere at once. A shot caught his left arm, tearing through coat and skin. He felt it, distant, clinical, but didn't stop moving. Another round whipped past his ear close enough to feel the heat. A third sparked off the ground near his feet. He made it to the cover of a water trough, pressed his back against it, breathing hard. The wound in his arm was bleeding, but not bad. Through muscle, missed bone. He could still use it. "You're good," Grayson called out. He'd moved positions, was somewhere near the general store now. "Better than good, but you're one man and we're many. Math doesn't work in your favor, friend." Cole checked his ammunition. 12 rounds left. 20-plus enemies. Grayson was right about the math, but math assumed everyone was equal, that each shooter was the same, each shot carried the same weight. Cole knew better. In a gunfight, it wasn't about numbers. It was about timing, about knowing who would break first, who would hesitate, who would run when the pressure mounted. It was about fear. And right now, for the first time in a long time, Cole could feel it radiating off them. They'd come into this town expecting sheep. Instead, they'd found a wolf. And wolves changed everything. "I know you," someone said. Different voice, older. Cole placed it, one of Grayson's lieutenants, a man named Cord Mattis, who'd been in the saloon 3 days ago. "I know that draw. I've seen it before." "Shut up, Cord," Grayson snapped. "That's not possible," Cord continued, his voice rising. "He's dead. Everyone knows he's dead. They said he died in Texas 5 years ago." "I said shut up." But Cord wasn't listening. He was backing away now, his gun lowering. "That's Kane Montgomery. That's the Phantom." The name hit the street like a physical thing. Kane Montgomery, the Phantom. The fastest gun west of anywhere, the man who'd killed 17 men in fair fights and made ghosts out of 24 more. The legend that mothers used to scare children and men used to measure themselves against. Dead 5 years. Except he wasn't. Cole, Kane, stepped out from behind the trough. Didn't say anything to confirm or deny, just stood there, letting the name settle, letting them see him fresh with new eyes. And he watched the change happen. Greed turned to uncertainty. Uncertainty turned to doubt. Doubt turned to the kind of fear that made hands shake and aim go wild. "I don't care who he is," Grayson snarled, but his voice had lost its casual confidence. "He's one man with one gun, and we're leaving." This from another man, already backing toward his horse. "I signed up to rob towns, not fight legends. Anyone runs, I'll shoot them myself." But 3 more men were already moving, mounting up, riding hard south the way they'd come. Grayson watched them go, his jaw tight. When he looked back at Cole, there was something new in his eyes. Not fear exactly, but calculation. The look of a man reassessing the board. "This isn't over," he said. "It is." Cole spoke for the first time in 5 years, and his voice came out rough, unused. "Leave now. You might live. Stay. You won't." Big words from a dead man, but Grayson was already retreating, signaling to his remaining crew. "Mount up!" They scattered like startled birds, grabbing horses, pulling back. Grayson was the last to leave, sitting on his black horse at the edge of town, staring at Cole with an expression that promised this conversation wasn't finished. "I'll remember you, Kane Montgomery," he called out, "and I'll be back." Then they were gone, disappearing into the darkness, leaving behind the wreckage of their brief occupation. Cole stood in the center of the street, his arm bleeding, his gun still drawn, and listened to the silence that followed violence. It sounded like relief mixed with horror, like people who just watched their worst fears come to life and then retreat. Slowly, doors opened. People emerged. Frank Hastings was still alive, being tended to by Sarah and 2 other women. Tom Ridley was sitting up, groaning. Mrs. Patterson, Cole checked, was breathing. The bullet had grazed her shoulder, but she'd fainted from shock, not death. They all stared at him. Not with gratitude exactly, more like recognition, like seeing something you thought was extinct suddenly walk past your window. Sarah approached slowly, her hands shaking. You're him, the one they talk about." Cole holstered his gun, felt the weight of it settle against his hip like an old argument he'd lost. "Was. But you—" She gestured at the street, the scattered guns, the blood. "You saved us." Had he? Or had he just postponed the inevitable? Grayson Black wasn't the type to forgive humiliation. He'd be back, and next time he'd bring more men, more guns, more of everything that made Mercy a liability. "You need to leave," Cole said, his voice still rough. "All of you. Tonight. This town is marked now." "Leave?" Frank Hastings had managed to sit up, his leg wrapped in makeshift bandages. "This is our home. Your home is going to be a graveyard in 3 days when he comes back with 50 men instead of 20. Then help us defend it." "I can't." As Cole turned to go, felt every eye on his back. "I'm not that person anymore." "You just killed," Sarah started. "Didn't kill anyone," Cole interrupted. "Disarmed them. Different thing." "Why?" Good question. Cole didn't have a good answer. Maybe because killing was easy and he'd spent 5 years trying to be hard. Maybe because the moment you start killing again, you become the thing you were running from. Maybe because 17 dead men was enough weight to carry and he didn't want to add to the load. "Because," he said finally, "every man I kill is proof that Cole Mercer was just pretend. The Kane Montgomery was real, and I'm not ready to accept that yet." He walked back toward the saloon, leaving them standing in the street, leaving them with questions he couldn't answer because he was still asking them himself. Inside the saloon, he locked the door behind him, slumped against it, and let the adrenaline drain out all at once. His hand started shaking, not much, just enough to notice. The wound in his arm throbbed in time with his heartbeat. He'd been fast, faster than he had any right to be after 5 years of rust, but not as fast as he used to be. And against Grayson Black's full crew, against 50 men instead of 20, against killers who came prepared? Cole looked at his reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Saw Kane Montgomery staring back at him, still wearing Cole Mercer's face, but not as convinced by the disguise anymore. "Should have let them shoot you," he told his reflection. "Would have been simpler." But simple had left town the moment he strapped on that gun belt. The thing inside him, the thing he'd buried and thought was dead, was awake now. And Cole knew from long, bitter experience that once you wake the wolf, you can't put it back to sleep by asking nicely. Outside, he could hear the town stirring, heard hammers and saws as people began repairs, heard voices arguing about staying or leaving, heard someone, Sarah, probably, organizing the wounded. And somewhere in the darkness south of here, Grayson Black was making plans that ended with Whisper Ridge burning and everyone in it dead. Cole poured himself a drink with shaking hands and tried to figure out how you save people from a monster when the only tool you have is becoming a bigger monster. The answer, he suspected, was the same as always. You don't. You just try to control which direction the monster faces when it wakes up. The whiskey didn't help. Cole sat in the dark saloon, watching the amber liquid catch what little moonlight leaked through the curtains, and waited for his hands to stop shaking. They didn't. 3 drinks in, they were still trembling like leaves in a wind that only he could feel. Outside, Whisper Ridge was doing what people do after surviving something they shouldn't have, making noise to prove they were still alive. Hammers rang against nails. Voices called out measurements and directions. Someone was singing, badly, probably drunk on relief more than alcohol. The sounds of a town that had looked death in the face and somehow convinced it to blink first. Cole knew better. Death didn't blink. It just stepped back to get a running start. The door rattled, locked, but someone was testing it anyway. "Cole?" Sarah's voice muffled through wood. "I know you're in there." He didn't answer, poured another drink instead, his 4th or 5th, losing count. Frank needs medical attention. Real attention. Not just bandages and hope. We need to send someone to Rollins for a doctor, but the road's not safe with Black's men out there. Cole drank. The whiskey burned going down, settled in his gut like hot coal. "Please, just talk to me." He set down the glass harder than he meant to. It didn't break, but it wanted to. Everything in this town wanted to break, was maybe already broken, and just hadn't fallen apart yet. The door stopped rattling. He heard her footsteps retreat, slow and heavy, and felt something that might have been guilt if he'd let himself feel much of anything. An hour passed, maybe 2. Time moved different in the dark, stretched out and compressed at the same time. Cole sat with his gun on the bar in front of him, the metal catching light like it was trying to remind him it was there. He'd cleaned it, reloaded it, checked the mechanism 17 times because 17 was the number that haunted him. And maybe if he did things in 17s, he could make peace with it. Didn't work, never did. The second knock came around midnight, different pattern, heavier hand. "Mercer," Frank Hastings' voice, tight with pain. "We need to talk." "Go away, Frank." "Can't do that." "Your leg's shot. You should be resting." "Should be dead, according to the odds. Guess we're both full of surprises tonight." A pause. "You gonna make me stand out here bleeding, or you gonna open this door like a man?" Cole stood, crossed to the door, threw the bolt, pulled it open to find Frank leaning heavy on a makeshift crutch, his face the color of old paper, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool night air. "You look like hell," Cole said. "You should see the other guy." Frank hobbled inside without invitation, made his way to the nearest chair, lowered himself into it with a grunt that tried to be a scream but settled for something in between. "Sarah's right. I need a doctor. We all do. Half the town's got injuries ranging from bad to worse. Then send someone to Rollins." "I'm looking at him." Cole shook his head, moved back behind the bar because that's where he belonged, where things made sense. "I'm not a messenger boy." "No." Frank shifted his leg, winced. "You're Kane Montgomery, the Phantom, the man who killed 17 men in fair fights," Cole interrupted. "I know the count. I was there." "So help us." "I did help you. Ran off Black's gang, bought you time to leave. This is our home. It's wood and nails. You can build another one somewhere that doesn't have a target painted on it." Frank was quiet for a moment, studying Cole with eyes that had seen too much and somehow still expected better. "You know what I see when I look at you? A drunk bartender who wants to be left alone? A man who's scared." Cole's hand stopped halfway to the bottle. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Frank leaned forward, ignoring the pain it cost him. "You're not hiding here because you want peace. You're hiding because you're terrified of what you are. And tonight, when you had no choice, when it was save people or let them die, you showed everyone exactly what you've been running from." "I didn't kill anyone." "No, you did something harder. You controlled it. That draw, that precision. You could have killed every one of Black's men in the time it took them to flinch. But you didn't. You disarmed them, shot the guns out of their hands like it was a trick from a traveling show." Frank's voice dropped. "That takes more skill than killing, takes more discipline. And it scares you because it means maybe you're not the monster you think you are." Cole poured another drink, didn't offer one to Frank. "What do you want from me?" "Ride to Rollins, get a doctor, come back. And then what, play sheriff? Defend this town against Black when he returns with an army? If that's what it takes. I'm not a hero, Frank." "No," Frank agreed. "You're just a man who's good at killing who decided to stop. That's rarer than any hero I've ever met." He pushed himself up, the effort costing him everything he had left. "Ride out at dawn. There's a doctor named Morrison, works out of a clinic on 2nd Street. Tell him Frank Hastings sent you and we'll pay whatever he asks." "I didn't agree to this." "You will." Frank made it to the door, paused with his hand on the frame. "Because for all your talk about being nobody, about Cole Mercer being real and Kane Montgomery being dead, you walked out into that street tonight. Not for glory, not for reputation. You did it because you couldn't watch good people die when you had the power to stop it." He looked back, and his eyes were clear despite the pain. "That's not the choice a nobody makes. That's not even the choice a gunslinger makes. That's the choice a good man makes, even if he's forgotten how to believe it." Then he was gone, limping into the night, leaving Cole alone with his whiskey and his thoughts and the gun on the bar that somehow looked heavier than it had 5 minutes ago. Dawn came cold and gray, the kind of morning that felt like the world hadn't fully committed to being awake yet. Cole saddled a horse he'd borrowed from the livery, a roan mare with intelligent eyes and a disposition that suggested she'd tolerate his company but wouldn't enjoy it, and prepared to ride. The town was already stirring, windows being replaced, blood being scrubbed from the street. Mrs. Patterson sitting on her porch, arm in a sling, directing traffic like she hadn't nearly died 12 hours ago. Sarah appeared as Cole was checking the saddle straps. She had a bag in her hands, heavy with something that clinked. "Supplies," she said, handing it over. "Food, water, ammunition, and this." She pulled out a folded piece of paper. List of medical supplies we need. Morrison will know what it means. Cole took the bag, tied it to the saddle, took the list, tucked it in his coat pocket. Thank you, Sarah said. For what? For going. For last night. For not being as much of a coward as you pretend to be. He almost smiled. Didn't quite make it. You sure you want to thank the man who just put a bigger target on this town? You didn't put it there. Grayson Black did when he decided we were easy pickings. She crossed her arms, and Cole recognized the posture. Defensive, protective. The stance of someone who'd decided to fight even if the odds said they shouldn't. And you showed him we're not. For now. He'll come back. Then we'll be ready. Cole mounted up, settled into the saddle. The mare shifted under him, testing his weight, deciding whether to accept it. She did eventually, with a snort that said she reserved the right to change her mind. Cole? Sarah's voice stopped him before he could ride out. That name they called you, Kane Montgomery. Is it true? He could lie. Should lie. But something about the morning light and the way she asked, not afraid, not impressed, just curious, made honesty seem less dangerous than it was. Used to be. The 17 men, fair fights, each one. Didn't ambush anyone, didn't shoot anyone in the back. They drew, I drew faster. And the ones who weren't fair? Cole's jaw tightened. Had it coming, every one of them. She nodded slowly, processing this. And now you're Cole Mercer. Trying to be. Which one rode out last night? The question hit harder than it should have. Cole looked down at her, this school teacher in a dying town who somehow still believed in things like right and wrong, who'd watched him become someone else for 30 seconds and was still standing here talking to him like he was human. Don't know yet, he said honestly. Still figuring that out. He rode before she could ask anything else, before the questions could dig any deeper into territory he wasn't ready to excavate. The trail to Rawlins was 40 miles of hard terrain, the kind of country that killed the careless and tested everyone else. Cole kept the mare at a steady pace, not pushing, saving her strength for whatever might come. The morning sun climbed slow and reluctant, like it knew what kind of day it was in for. He'd been riding for 2 hours when he saw the smoke. Black column rising from somewhere off the main trail, thick and oily. The kind of smoke that came from buildings burning, from people's lives turning to ash. Cole pulled up, studied it, could keep riding. Wasn't his problem. Rawlins was straight ahead, the doctor was waiting, and getting involved in someone else's disaster was exactly the kind of thinking that led to 17 dead men and a name he couldn't escape. The smoke billowed higher. Cole cursed, turned the mare off the trail, and rode toward the fire. The homestead was small, single cabin, barn, maybe 20 acres of land that looked like it had been coaxed into productivity through sheer stubbornness. Now the barn was burning, and 3 men on horseback were circling the cabin like wolves who'd cornered something that might still bite. Black's men. Cole recognized 2 of them from last night, though he hadn't caught names. The third was new, but the gear was the same, the attitude was the same. Same pack, different rats. A shotgun blast erupted from the cabin. One of the riders yelped, clutched his arm, wheeled his horse away. The other 2 laughed. "Getting feisty in there," one shouted. "I like feisty." Cole dismounted, ground-tied the mare behind a rise where she'd be out of sight. Checked his gun, loaded, always loaded, started forward on foot, quiet. The cabin door opened, and an old man stumbled out, shotgun in hand but empty, using it like a club. He got 3 steps before one of the riders put a rope around him, yanked him down hard. The old man hit the ground like a sack of grain. "Where's the money, old-timer?" The rider who'd roped him dismounted, stood over him. "We know you got savings. Everyone's got savings." "Ain't got nothing," the old man spat. He was 70 if he was a day, weathered face and hands that shook. "You already took my horses, my winter stores." The rider kicked him. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to make a point. Wrong answer. "Hey!" A woman's voice from the cabin. Young, scared. "Leave him alone!" She came out holding a rifle that looked too big for her, maybe 20 years old, dark hair, eyes that were trying to be brave and mostly succeeding. Daughter or granddaughter, Cole couldn't tell. "Well, well," the rider's voice changed, got a different kind of hungry. "Looks like we found something worth taking after all." The other 2 riders moved to flank her. She swung the rifle between them, but 3 targets was too many, and they knew it. Cole stepped out of the tree line, his boots crunching on gravel. All 3 riders turned. All 3 hands moved to guns. "Private party, friend," the one who'd kicked the old man said. "Move along." Cole stopped about 30 feet out, his hand hanging loose near his holster. Morning sun was at his back, putting him in silhouette. Good positioning, always pay attention to the light. "You boys were in Whisper Ridge last night," Cole said. His voice was flat, conversational. "Didn't get enough of a beating?" Recognition dawned on the rider's face, followed immediately by fear, then anger trying to cover the fear. "You're the bartender, the one who got lucky." "Lucky," Cole repeated. "That what you're calling it?" "3 of us, 1 of you. Math's different now." "Math was different last night, too. Didn't help you then." The rider's hand twitched toward his gun. Cole watched it, tracked the micro-movements. Nervous system firing, muscles tensing. 2 seconds from drawing, maybe 3. "Walk away," the rider said. "This ain't your fight." "You're right," Cole agreed. "But I'm tired of walking away. Gets old." "Your funeral?" "Probably, but not today." They drew. All 3 of them, coordinated, professional. Fast enough that against most men they'd have won. Cole was faster. His gun cleared leather before theirs hit halfway. 3 shots, spaced so close together they almost sounded like one. 3 guns flew from 3 hands, spinning away into the dirt. The riders stood there, hands empty and stinging, staring at Cole like he'd just performed an impossible magic trick. "Jesus Christ," one of them whispered. "He really is the Phantom." Cole kept his gun trained on them, steady as stone. "You've got 2 choices. Ride back to Grayson Black, tell him what happened here. Or I can give you a 3rd option you won't enjoy." "What's the message?" "Tell him Whisper Ridge is off limits. Tell him Cole Mercer is dead, and Kane Montgomery is done being quiet. And tell him if he rides back through here, I won't shoot the guns out of his men's hands next time." Cole's voice went cold, the kind of cold that came from a place he'd tried to bury. "I'll shoot everything else." They didn't need to be told twice. Mounted up, rode hard north, didn't look back. Cole holstered his gun, turned to the old man and the woman. They were both staring at him with expressions that mixed gratitude and terror in roughly equal measure. "You all right?" he asked. The old man nodded, let the woman help him up. "Thanks to you. Name's Emmett Sawyer. This is my granddaughter, Rachel." "Cole Mercer." "The hell you are." Emmett wiped blood from his mouth, studying Cole with eyes that had seen enough of life to recognize a lie. "You're Kane Montgomery. Heard the name when I was younger. Thought you were dead." "Was trying to be." "Why?" Cole looked at the burning barn, at the scattered belongings these people had probably spent years accumulating. "Because being alive meant people kept dying around me." "Well," Emmett said, glancing at his granddaughter, "speaking as someone who'd be dead if you'd stayed that way, I'm glad you failed." Rachel hadn't said anything yet, but she was looking at Cole like she was trying to solve an equation that kept changing variables. "You're going to Rollins? How'd you—" "Only thing north of here that matters. And you're carrying medical supplies in that bag." She pointed to where the mare waited. "You riding for Whisper Ridge?" "For now. We've got wounded too. My brother, he took a bullet when Black's gang came through yesterday. Needs a doctor bad." Cole should have said no. Should have explained that he had his own mission, his own people to save, that he couldn't take on every problem between here and Rollins. But he looked at Rachel's face, at the hope fighting with fear, and heard himself say, "Get him ready to ride. We leave in 5 minutes." They left in 7. Rachel's brother, Thomas, 17, pale as moonlight, was strapped to a makeshift travois behind a horse that Emmett claimed the raiders hadn't found. The wound was in his side, high up near the ribs, wrapped in bandages that were more red than white. "How long ago was he shot?" Cole asked as they started riding. 20 hours, give or take, Rachel said. She was riding alongside the travois, one hand always reaching back to check on Thomas. "Fever started this morning." "Not good. Infection, probably. Setting in fast." "The kid needed a doctor yesterday. Now was second best, but second wasn't looking promising. They made hard time, pushing the horses as much as they dared. The sun climbed, beat down, turned the trail into a ribbon of heat and dust. Thomas moaned occasionally, thrashing against the ropes that held him to the travois. Rachel talked to him constantly, Soft words, reassurances, stories about things they'd do when he got better. Cole had heard that kind of talking before. Desperation dressed up as hope. Midday, they stopped to water the horses at a creek that was more mud than water. Cole checked Thomas's wound, didn't like what he saw. The bandages were soaked through, and the skin around the injury was hot to touch, angry red spreading outward like roots. "How bad?" Rachel asked, though her voice said she already knew. "Bad enough. We need to move faster." "He won't survive faster. He won't survive slow either. Infection's spreading." Rachel's face did something complicated. She was young, too young to be making decisions about her brother's life. But age didn't matter when death showed up. It made everyone the same kind of old. "Do what you have to do," she said finally. They remounted, pushed harder. The horses didn't like it, but they were frontier stock, bred for hard country and harder demands. They gave what was asked and then some. An hour later, riders appeared on the horizon behind them. Cole saw them first, glanced back to confirm what he already knew. 5 horsemen, moving fast, closing distance. Too far to identify, but he didn't need to see faces to know who they were. "Black's men?" Rachel had followed his gaze. "Unless you've got other enemies I don't know about." "We need to run." "Can't. Not with your brother in that state. Travois will shake apart and he'll die." "So what do we do?" Cole scanned the terrain. Open country, no cover worth mentioning. A stand of rocks about quarter-mile ahead might provide defensive position. Might also become a tomb if they got pinned down. The riders were gaining. "When we reach those rocks," Cole said, "you take Thomas and get down. Keep pressure on that wound. Don't come out no matter what you hear." "What are you going to do?" "Same thing I did last night. Same thing I've been doing for 5 years. He touched the gun at his hip. "Thing I'm good at, even when I wish I wasn't." They made it to the rocks with maybe 2 minutes to spare. Cole helped Rachel get Thomas down, positioned behind the largest boulder. The kid was barely conscious now, mumbling words that didn't connect to anything. "Stay down," Cole repeated. Then he walked back out into the open, stood in the middle of the trail, and waited. The riders slowed when they saw him, spread out into a line. 5 men, all armed, all showing the easy confidence of people who'd won this scenario before. The one in the middle was Cord Mattis, Grayson Black's lieutenant, the man who'd recognized Cole last night, who'd called him by his real name. "Mr. Montgomery," Cord called out, stopping his horse about 50 feet away. "We meet again." "Cord, you remember me. I'm flattered. You served notice on the Sawyer place, burned their barn, shot a kid." "Business," Cord shrugged. "Black wants this whole territory scared. Scared people are compliant people. You understand how it works." "Used to. Don't anymore." "That's the funny thing about you, isn't it?" Cord leaned forward in his saddle. "Man builds a reputation like yours, then tries to walk away like it never happened. Like you can just decide to be someone else and the past won't follow." "It followed," Cole acknowledged. "That's why I'm standing here." "And here's where it ends. See, Grayson's real angry about last night. You embarrassed him, made him look weak in front of his men. Can't have that. Bad for business, bad for reputation. So he sent you to clean up his mess. He sent me to make an example." Cord's hand rested on his gun. The 4 men with him did the same. "You're good, Montgomery. Maybe the best I've ever seen. But 5 on 1, even you can't beat that math." Cole was silent for a moment, running calculations. 5 shooters, varying skill levels. Cord was dangerous, former Pinkerton, rumor said, before he went bad. The others were standard gang trash, fast enough to matter, but not fast enough to win. But 5 guns all firing at once, even if he dropped 3 in the first second, meant the other 2 would have time to shoot back. And bullets didn't care about reputations. "You're right," Cole said. "I can't beat 5 on 1. Cord smiled. "Smart man. So here's how this plays out. You put your gun on the ground, walk away, and we'll make it quick for the people hiding in those rocks. You try to be a hero, and we make it slow. Your choice." Cole's hand moved to his gun, but not to draw, just resting there, feeling the weight of it. "Got a question first. Make it fast." "You ever wonder why they call me the Phantom?" Cord's smile faltered slightly. "Because you're fast. That's part of it." Cole's voice was quiet now, almost conversational. But the real reason is because when people faced me, when they looked down and saw their gun was gone and they were still standing, there was this moment, maybe a second, maybe less, where they wondered if they'd just been killed by a ghost. If I was even real, or just something their dying brain made up to make sense of the impossible. What's your point? My point, Cole said, and his hand moved, is that you're about to understand the name. He drew, not at Cord. At the man to Cord's left, the one whose horse was stamping nervous, whose weight distribution said he was about to bolt. Cole's first shot took the gun from his hand before he'd cleared leather. Second shot, same target, hit the horse's bridle, snapped it clean. The horse reared, threw the rider, and suddenly there were only 4. Cole moved left as he fired, not running but gliding, making himself a harder target. Third shot hit the next rider's gun. Fourth missed, first miss, muscle memory not quite perfect, but the fifth hit home, disarming another man. Return fire came hot and wild. Cole dropped flat, rolled right, came up shooting. 2 more guns went flying. He counted shots, 8 fired, 4 left in the cylinder, and reassessed. Cord and 1 other still armed, the rest scrambling for dropped weapons or running for cover. Cord's gun came up fast, professional. He fired 3 times, and all 3 shots came close enough that Cole felt the air move. Not lucky shooting, skilled shooting. Cole returned fire, aiming for Cord's gun hand. Hit the gun instead, sent it spinning. Cord cursed, grabbed for a second pistol with his left hand, but the last armed rider had flanked wide, had a clean shot at Cole's back. Cole saw it in Cord's eyes, the flicker of satisfaction, the knowledge that his man had the angle. Cole spun, dropped to one knee, fired his last round. The flanking rider's gun flew away and the man yelped, clutching a hand that was bleeding but not bad. Ricochet had caught him, not the direct hit. Empty cylinder. 5 men, various states of disarmed or scattered. Cord reaching for his second gun. Cole's hand moved in practiced motion, ejecting spent shells, loading fresh rounds. Muscle memory from 10,000 practice draws. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Cord's gun cleared his holster. Cole's cylinder clicked shut. They stared at each other across 30 feet of dusty ground, both armed, both ready, both knowing this moment was the one that mattered. You hesitated, Cord said. His gun was steady, aimed center mass. You could have killed me, could have killed all of us, but you aimed for the guns. Again. Yeah. Why? Cole's gun was aimed the same way, center mass, kill shot, the kind of shooting that ended conversations permanently. Because killing's easy, and I spent too many years proving it. So what now? We both shoot, we both die. Could happen. Or, Cord said slowly, we could both walk away. I tell Black you got lucky, ambushed us, whatever story keeps him from knowing we failed. You ride to Rollins, get your doctor, pretend this didn't happen. And next time's next time. I'm talking about right now, this moment, 2 men with guns aimed at each other, wondering which one's faster. Cole considered it. Reasonable offer. Smart, even. Walk away, live to fight another day, save ammunition for battles that mattered. But something in Cord's eyes said this wasn't over. Said that walking away now just meant facing 6 riders next time instead of 5, then 10, then 20. Said that Grayson Black was the kind of man who interpreted mercy as weakness and would keep pushing until someone pushed back hard enough to make it stop. No, Cole said. Cord's finger tightened on the trigger. Your funeral. Probably. But not today. What happened next happened so fast that Cord's brain couldn't process it until it was over. Cole's gun moved. Not down, not to fire, but up and to the side in a motion that made no sense until suddenly it did. He fired, not at Cord, but at a rock outcropping above and behind the scattered riders. The bullet hit limestone, ricocheted at an angle no sane person would calculate, and struck the ground 6 inches in front of Cord's horse. The horse panicked, reared, threw Cord backward. His shot went wild, straight up into empty air. He hit the ground hard, lost his gun, lay there gasping. By the time he could breathe again, Cole's gun was aimed at him, rock steady, and the other riders were mounting up, already retreating. That's impossible, Cord wheezed. That shot, calculating the angle, the ricochet, that's impossible. You're probably right. Cole lowered his gun, but it worked. He walked forward, picked up Cord's gun, emptied the cylinder, tossed it back to him. Tell Black what you saw. Tell him I'm coming. Tell him Whisper Ridge is where it ends. Cole turned to walk away, then paused. And tell him if he wants to finish this, to bring everyone. Because I'm done running, done hiding, done being afraid of what I am. He'll kill you. He can try. Cord pushed himself up, stumbling toward his horse. The other riders were already long gone, just dust on the horizon. You're making a mistake, Montgomery. Probably. Cole started back toward the rocks where Rachel and Thomas waited. Seems to be my specialty. Cord mounted up, wincing from the fall. One more thing. Cole turned. That story about the phantom, about being a ghost, I get it now. You're not fast because you practice. You're fast because you've already accepted you're dead. You've already made peace with it. That's why nothing scares you, why you can do impossible things. Cord pulled his horse around. But that's also why you'll lose. Dead men can't protect the living. Eventually, Black will kill everyone you're trying to save, and you'll be standing there wondering why being the fastest didn't matter. Then he was gone, riding hard after his scattered crew. Cole stood in the settling dust, Cord's words hanging in the air like smoke. He was probably right, usually was. But right and wrong didn't change what needed doing. Rachel emerged from the rocks, her face pale. Is it over? For now. Thomas is worse. We need to move. They rode. The sun climbed, peaked, began its long descent. Thomas drifted in and out of consciousness, his fever climbing, his breathing getting shallow. Rachel talked to him when he was awake, held his hand when he wasn't. Cole pushed them hard, harder than he should have. But dying from exhaustion beat dying from infection, and at least one of those could be fixed with rest. Rawlins appeared on the horizon as the sun touched the western mountains, a real town, bigger than Whisper Ridge, with streets that were actually planned and buildings that looked like they might last through winter. They found Dr. Morrison's clinic on 2nd Street, a 2-story building with clean windows and a sign that said physician in letters that someone had taken time to paint properly. Cole hammered on the door. An older man answered, white hair, wire glasses, the kind of face that suggested he'd seen enough suffering that nothing surprised him anymore. Dr. Morrison got wounded. Multiple cases, one critical. Morrison took one look at Thomas on the travois, at Rachel's desperate face, and stood aside. Bring him in. Examination room's to the left. They got Thomas inside onto a table. Morrison started cutting away bandages, his hands moving with the kind of efficiency that came from years of practice. He didn't ask questions, didn't waste time, just worked. Cole stood back, out of the way, watching. Rachel hovered close until Morrison gently pushed her toward a chair. Let me work, child. You'll do him more good sitting down than passing out on my floor. She sat, but her eyes never left her brother. Morrison worked for 20 minutes in focused silence, cleaning the wound, applying ointments that smelled like medicine and hope. Finally, he straightened, wiped his hands on a towel. He'll live. Infection's bad, but I've seen worse. Keep him here for 3 days, maybe 4. Push fluids, change the dressings twice daily, and pray he's got more fight in him than the fever does. Rachel sagged with relief, tears running down her face. Thank you so much. Thank your friend here. Morrison nodded at Cole. Another hour, maybe 2, and I couldn't have saved him. He turned to Cole, studied him with eyes that saw more than most people's. You've got blood on your sleeve. Wounded too? Cole had almost forgotten about his arm. The bullet graze from last night, 12 hours ago, felt like a year, had mostly stopped bleeding but looked ugly. It's nothing. I'll be the judge of that. Sit. Cole sat. Morrison cleaned and bandaged the wound with the same efficient care he'd given Thomas. Up close, Cole could see the man's hands had the slight tremor of age, but they were steady where it counted. You're the one Frank Hastings sent for, Morrison said. It wasn't a question. How'd you know? Because Frank wouldn't send just anyone on a 40-mile ride through territory crawling with outlaws. And because you've got the look of a man carrying more weight than a medical supply run requires. Morrison finished the bandage, stepped back. Whisper Ridge is in trouble. Everyone's in trouble. Some just know it sooner than others. Frank's a good man, known him 20 years. If he asks for help, it's because he needs it. Morrison moved to a cabinet, started pulling down bottles and wrapped packages. I'll ride back with you tomorrow. Bring what supplies I can carry. It's dangerous. I'm 63 years old, survived 2 wars, 3 plagues, and 1 very angry wife before she passed. Dangerous is relative. He set the supplies on the counter. Besides, I took an oath. Doesn't have an exception clause for when things get scary. Cole almost smiled. Fair enough. They stayed the night in Rollins. Morrison had rooms above his clinic, spare, clean, functional. Rachel stayed with Thomas, holding his hand, talking to him even though he couldn't hear. Cole found a corner, sat with his back to the wall, and tried to sleep. Didn't work. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Cord Mattis's face, heard his words. Dead men can't protect the living. Maybe true. Probably true. But what choice did he have? Walk away, and people like the Sawyers died. People like Frank Hastings bled out. Towns like Whisper Ridge burned. Stay and fight, and eventually black superior numbers would win. Eventually the math would catch up, and Cole would be lying in the dirt with the rest of them. Either way ended in death. Only question was how many people he took with him and which direction. He must have dozed eventually because he jerked awake to Rachel shaking his shoulder, dawn light coming through the window. Thomas is awake, she said. He wants to thank you. Cole followed her downstairs. Thomas looked terrible, pale, sweating, weak as water, but his eyes were clear. You saved my life, Thomas said, his voice barely above a whisper. Doc saved your life. I just got you here. You fought off Black's men. Rachel told me, 5 of them. Disarm them. Different thing. Why? Same question everyone asked. Why not kill? Why show mercy? Why make it harder on yourself? Cole didn't have a good answer. The real answer, that he was trying to prove something to himself, trying to believe that Cole Mercer was more than just Kane Montgomery in disguise, sounded too philosophical for a kid who'd nearly died. Because 17 dead men is enough, he said instead. Don't need to add to the list. Thomas looked at him with eyes too old for 17. They'll come back. Probably. You'll fight them again. If I have to. Why? We're nobody to you, just strangers you met on the road. Cole was quiet for a moment. Outside, he could hear Rollins waking up. Horses, voices, the sounds of life continuing despite everything trying to stop it. You ever feel like you're trying to pay off a debt you can't quite remember taking out? Cole asked. Thomas nodded slowly. That's why. Not because you're somebody, because you're nobody, and that matters more. 17 people I killed, they were all somebodies. Had names, reputations, reasons, people knew them. But the people who suffer when men like Black ride through, they're all nobodies. And somewhere along the way, I figured out that saving a nobody is worth more than killing a somebody ever was. He stood, headed for the door. Behind him, Thomas called out, Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Cole paused, hand on the frame. Name's Mercer, Cole Mercer. Montgomery's dead, trying to keep him that way. They rode out at noon. Cole, Dr. Morrison, and enough medical supplies to treat a small war. The doctor sat his horse well for a man his age, kept pace without complaint. How bad is it really? Morrison asked after an hour of riding. In Whisper Ridge. Bad. Frank's shot in the leg. Maybe a dozen others wounded to varying degrees, and Black's gang is coming back with reinforcements. How many? Enough. Morrison was quiet for a while, watching the landscape roll past. Can you stop them? Honestly? Don't know. I'm fast, probably faster than anyone Black's got. But I'm one man, and eventually one man's not enough. Could run. Take Frank and anyone smart enough to leave. Abandon the town. Start over somewhere else. Could, Cole agreed. Probably should. But I spent 5 years running, and all it did was bring me right back to this. Fighting's the only direction I haven't tried yet. Might get you killed. Probably will, but at least I'll die as someone I can stand looking at in the mirror. They made camp that night at the same creek where Cole had stopped with Rachel, built a small fire, ate dried beef and hard bread, watched the stars come out like punctures in a canvas too dark to see past. You believe in redemption? Morrison asked suddenly. Cole poked at the fire with a stick. Used to. Not sure anymore. Why not? Because redemption suggests you can balance the scales, that enough good deeds erase the bad ones. But the people I killed don't get to come back just because I stopped someone else from dying. The scales don't balance. They just keep getting heavier. So what's the point of trying to be better? Damned if I know. Cole threw the stick into the fire, watched it burn. Maybe there isn't one. Maybe I'm just stubborn, or stupid, or so used to fighting that I don't know how to stop. Morrison smiled, barely visible in the firelight. You know what I think? What? I think you're scared of the answer, scared that maybe redemption is real. Maybe the scales can balance. And if that's true, then you have to keep trying, have to keep fighting. Can't just give up and let the darkness win, because that would make the last 5 years mean something, and meaning is terrifying. Cole didn't answer. The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks up into the night. Above them, the stars watched without judgment, without care, just cold points of light that would be there long after everyone down here was dust. They reached Whisper Ridge the next morning to find the town transformed. Barricades had been erected at both ends of the main street. Windows were boarded up, reinforced with whatever scraps of lumber people could find. Someone had organized watch rotations, townspeople taking turns scanning the horizon for riders. Frank Hastings was sitting on the porch of the general store, his wounded leg propped up, directing traffic like a general with a battlefield map only he could see. He saw Cole and Morrison riding in, and something like relief crossed his face. "About time," Frank called out. "Was starting to think you'd decided Rollins was nicer." "It is," Cole said, dismounting, "but the company's worse." Dr. Morrison headed straight for Frank, started examining his leg without preamble. Frank grimaced but let him work. Sarah appeared from the general store, carrying a rifle that looked like she'd learned to hold it properly in the last 24 hours. "You made it back." "Surprised?" "Honestly? A little. Thought you might keep riding. Would have been the smart thing. Smart and right don't always shake hands." She smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. "No, they don't." She gestured at the fortifications. "We've been preparing. Everyone who can hold a gun is armed. We've got supplies stored in the church basement, water barrels set up at strategic points. If Black comes back, we'll be ready." Cole looked around at the preparations. Barricades that would slow but not stop determined riders. Armed townspeople who'd probably never fired at a human target. Fortifications that would turn the town into a kill box if things went wrong. It was brave. It was determined. It was also suicide dressed up as hope. But he didn't say that. Because sometimes hope was all people had, and crushing it before the fight even started was its own kind of killing. "Good," he said instead. "Keep everyone sharp. Black won't wait long. He's got too much pride to let last night stand." "How long?" Cole scanned the horizon, the southern approach, the places where dust would rise when riders came. 2 days, maybe 3. He needs time to gather more men, to plan. But not much time. Men like him, pride costs them patience. Frank, his leg freshly bandaged by Morrison, struggled to his feet. "Then we use what time we have. Cole, you'll train whoever can learn. Basic tactics, positioning, how to shoot without getting shot." "I'm not a teacher. You're what we have, and you're the only one here who's actually survived a gunfight against professionals." Cole wanted to argue, wanted to explain that teaching people to fight was just another way of getting them killed. But Frank's eyes said he already knew that, and had decided it was better than the alternative. "Fine," Cole said. "Round up everyone who can shoot. We start in an hour." The next 2 days blurred together in a fever of preparation and dread. Cole taught basic tactics to townspeople whose hands shook just holding guns. Showed them how to use cover, how to breathe through fear, how to aim center mass, because fancy shooting was for people who had time to miss. Most of them wouldn't survive if it came to a real fight, but some might, and some was better than none. Frank coordinated defenses. Morrison treated lingering injuries and prepared for worse ones to come. Sarah organized the women and children into evacuation plans, fallback positions, last-ditch hideaways that might keep them alive if everything else failed. And Cole waited, gun at his hip, watching the southern horizon, knowing that somewhere out there Grayson Black was coming with enough men to make the last fight look like a warm-up. On the evening of the second day, as the sun bled red across the western sky, Cole stood alone outside the saloon and let himself feel it all. The fear. The certainty. The knowledge that tomorrow or the next day this town would burn, and he'd be standing in the middle of it trying to save people from monsters while becoming one himself. Kane Montgomery was awake now, fully awake, and Cole Mercer was fading like a dream he couldn't quite hold on to. Maybe that was how it had to be. Maybe that was the only way any of them survived. The wind shifted, carrying dust from the south. Cole turned, walked inside, and started preparing for war. They came at dawn on the third day, when the light was still gray and uncertain, when the world hadn't decided yet whether it wanted to be awake or stay dreaming. Cole saw them first from the roof of the saloon where he'd spent the night watching, dust rising on the southern horizon, thick and dark, the kind that only came from many horses moving fast. He counted in his head 40 riders, maybe 50. More than he'd hoped, fewer than he'd feared. He climbed down, his body stiff from the cold and the waiting, and walked to where Frank was already struggling into his gun belt despite the leg that wouldn't hold his full weight. "They're here," Cole said. Frank nodded, his face set in lines that said he'd been expecting this and dreading it in equal measure. "How many?" "Enough to matter." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one that counts." Cole checked his gun, loaded, always loaded, and scanned the street. The barricades looked smaller in the morning light, less substantial. The townspeople manning them looked younger, more afraid. "Get everyone to positions. Keep the civilians in the church basement like we planned. Anyone who can't shoot straight needs to stay down and stay quiet." "And you?" "I'll be in the street." "That's suicide." "Probably. But it'll draw their attention, keep them focused on me instead of the barricades. Give your people time to get clean shots." Frank grabbed Cole's arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "Don't throw your life away on some kind of redemption play. These people need you alive, not dead and noble." "I'll do my best." Cole pulled free, started walking toward the center of town. Behind him, he heard Frank shouting orders, heard the scramble of feet as people took positions they'd practiced but never believed they'd actually use. Sarah caught up with him halfway down the street. She had her rifle slung over her shoulder and a look on her face that said she was done being told to stay safe. "I'm not hiding in the basement," she said before he could tell her to. "You should. Should do a lot of things. Doesn't mean I will." She stopped walking, made him look at her. "You're planning something stupid, aren't you? Something where you stand alone against all of them and hope the math works out in your favor." "Math never works out in my favor. I just make do with what's left over." "Cole," she hesitated, and he saw something in her eyes that might have been fear or might have been something else, something he didn't have time to identify. "Don't die trying to prove you're someone you're not. The man who disarmed those riders, who rode 40 miles to save a stranger's brother, who came back when he could have kept running, that's already someone worth being." He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that Cole Mercer was just a disguise and Kane Montgomery was the truth underneath. But the words stuck somewhere between his brain and his mouth, and before he could unstick them, the sound of approaching hooves filled the air like thunder. They entered from the south, 53 riders moving in formation that spoke of military training, or at least professional experience. Grayson Black rode at the front on his black horse, and this time he wasn't smiling. This time he looked like a man who'd come to deliver a message written in blood and fire. The gang spread out as they entered the town, taking positions that would give them overlapping fields of fire, cutting off escape routes, establishing dominance through pure numbers and coordination. They knew what they were doing. This wasn't their first town. Cole stood in the middle of the street alone, his hand hanging loose near his gun. 53 pairs of eyes found him and stayed there. Grayson dismounted slowly, theatrically, making a show of it. Well, well, the Phantom himself, standing in the street like he's waiting for a duel. He walked forward, his boots striking the dirt, with sounds like a clock counting down. "You know what your problem is, Montgomery?" Cole didn't answer. "Your problem is you think this is the old days. Think you can stand in the street, draw faster than everyone else, and the whole thing resolves itself like some kind of fairy tale." Grayson stopped about 30 feet away. "But we're not in the old days anymore. We're in the new world, where numbers beat skill and money beats honor, and the only thing that matters is who's still standing when the smoke clears." "You done?" Cole asked. "Not even close." Grayson gestured at the town, at the barricades, at the armed townspeople trying to hide their fear. "All this preparation, all this effort, you really think it matters?" You really think a bunch of farmers and shopkeepers with rifles they barely know how to use are going to stop my crew? No, Cole said honestly. But they'll slow you down, and slow is all I need. Slow for what? For you to make a mistake. Grayson laughed, and his men joined in, the sound echoing off the buildings like mockery made audible. I don't make mistakes. I make examples. He pulled one of his pistols, a new one, replacing the one Cole had shot out of his hand, and aimed it casually at Cole's chest. Last chance. Walk away. Leave these people to their fate. You do that, and I'll let you live. You don't, and everyone here dies, starting with you. Cole's hand shifted slightly, adjusting angle, preparing. Can't do that. Why not? You don't know these people. They're nothing to you. They're not nothing. That's the whole point. Grayson's face hardened. Then you're a fool, and fools die young. He raised his voice so the whole town could hear. Everyone listen up. You've got 1 minute to put down your weapons and come out with your hands up. Do that, and most of you live. Don't do that, and we burn this place to the ground with you in it. Silence. No one moved. Cole felt a surge of something that might have been pride or might have been horror. These people, these nobody farmers and shopkeepers, had decided to fight instead of surrender. Had looked at odds that would make smart money run and chosen to stand anyway. Your minute's up, Grayson said. Everything happened at once. Grayson fired. Cole moved, already reading the shot, already 3 steps left before the bullet arrived. Return fire came from the barricades. Ragged, poorly aimed, but enough to make Grayson's men take cover. Cole's gun cleared leather, barked twice, and 2 riders went down clutching shoulders, weapons spinning away. The street exploded into chaos. Grayson's men had expected resistance, but they'd expected it to fold quick. Instead, they got sustained fire from multiple positions, got barricades that forced them into kill zones, got a level of organization that shouldn't have existed in a town full of civilians. Cole moved through the chaos like he'd been born to it, which in a way he had. Drew and fired, dropped and rolled, came up shooting from angles that shouldn't have worked but did. He wasn't trying to kill, wasn't even trying to wound fatally. Just disarm, disable, remove pieces from the board as fast as he could calculate which pieces mattered most. A rider came at him from the left, gun blazing. Cole's shot took him in the right shoulder. Precise. Professional. The man screamed, dropped his weapon, wheeled his horse away. Another from the right, same result, different shoulder. They were learning, starting to hang back, starting to realize that getting close to Cole meant getting hurt. But there were too many. For every one he dropped, 3 more filled the gap. And they were advancing, pushing toward the barricades, using superior numbers to overwhelm defensive positions. Cole saw Tom Ridley go down at the north barricade, clutching his leg. Saw one of the townspeople, couldn't remember his name, young kid, maybe 20, take a bullet in the chest and fall backward, already gone. Saw the western position starting to collapse under sustained fire. The math was catching up. Cole ran toward the collapsing position, firing as he moved. Dropped 2 riders who were flanking wide, sent a third scrambling for cover. Reached the barricade to find 3 townspeople pinned down, one already wounded, the other 2 too scared to return fire. Shoot back, Cole shouted, reloading while crouched behind the makeshift wall. Don't aim, just shoot. Make them think twice. One of them, a woman, maybe 40, hands shaking so bad she could barely hold her rifle, managed to fire. The shot went wide, hit nothing, but it made the advancing riders pause. That was enough. Cole used the pause to drop another weapon from another hand, then another, creating chaos in their formation. But a bullet caught the barricade next to his head, spraying splinters. Another punched through the wood 6 inches from his shoulder. They were concentrating fire, multiple shooters targeting his position. He had to move. Cole vaulted the barricade, hit the ground running. Bullets tracked him, chewing up dirt where he'd been half a second before. He made it to the cover of a water trough, pressed his back against it, breathing hard. His arm was bleeding again. The old wound had reopened from the exertion. His hands weren't shaking yet, but they would be soon. Adrenaline only lasted so long, and he'd been running on it since dawn. Montgomery, Grayson's voice cut through the gunfire. You're good, I'll give you that. But you can't be everywhere at once. He was right. Cole couldn't. While he was here at the western position, the eastern barricade was taking heavy fire. While he was protecting one group, another was dying. The sound of splintering wood came from the north. Cole risked a glance, saw Grayson's men had broken through, were pouring into the town proper. Saw Frank Hastings trying to rally defenders, hobbling on his bad leg, shooting with steady hands despite the chaos. Then Frank went down, not shot, knocked down by a rider's horse, deliberately run over. He hit the ground hard, his rifle flying away, and didn't get up. Something cold settled in Cole's chest. Something old and familiar, the feeling he'd spent 5 years running from. The thing that had made 17 men dead and earned him a name people whispered in the dark. Kane Montgomery woke up all the way. Cole stood up from behind the trough, stepped into the open street. Didn't run, didn't dodge. Just stood there, gun at his side, and let them see him. Every gun turned his direction. "You want to end this?" Cole's voice carried over the chaos, calm and cold. "Then end it. All of you. Shoot at once. Maybe you'll get lucky." Grayson, still mounted, raised his hand to signal cease fire. The shooting tapered off, stopped. The street went quiet except for the moaning of wounded and the crackle of buildings that had caught fire. "What game are you playing?" Grayson called out. "No game. Just tired of watching good people die while I'm trying to be something I'm not." Cole walked forward, slow and steady, closing the distance. "You wanted Kane Montgomery? Here he is. No more warnings, no more mercy shots. You keep coming. You keep killing these people. And I stop trying to be better than what I am." "You're threatening me? 1 man against 50? 41, Cole corrected. He'd been counting. "I dropped 12. 3 more won't fight anymore even if they want to. Makes it 41 against 1. Still bad odds, but better than they were 5 minutes ago." Grayson's face darkened. "You can't kill all of us." "No, but I can kill you, and your lieutenants, and everyone else who matters. The rest will run when their leaders are dead and their cause is a corpse." "Big talk. Want to test it?" For a moment, just a moment, Cole saw uncertainty flicker across Grayson's face, saw him doing math, calculating odds, wondering if his pride was worth his life. Then Cord Mattis rode up beside him, his face hard. "He's bluffing. No one's that fast, that good. He shoots you, we shoot him. He dies anyway." "True," Cole agreed. "But you die first. That worth it to you?" Grayson studied Cole with eyes that had seen enough violence to recognize the real thing. "You've changed since last time we met. Something's different." "I stopped pretending. And now what? We all draw, see who's faster, turn this into some kind of legend people tell stories about?" "Or," Cole said, his voice dropping, "you could leave, turn around, ride out, find easier prey, live to terrorize another town." "After you humiliated me? After you cost me men and money and reputation?" Grayson shook his head. "Can't do that. Bad for business. Then we do this the hard way." Cole's hand moved toward his gun. Not to draw, just to rest there, ready. Grayson's hand did the same. 41 guns aimed at one man who decided that being alive wasn't as important as being someone worth being. The moment stretched, pulled taut like a rope about to snap. Then Sarah screamed. Cole's head turned. Instinct, reaction, the worst possible move in a standoff. He saw her being dragged from the church by 2 of Grayson's men. Saw them holding her between them like a shield, a gun pressed to her head. "Drop it!" one of them shouted. "Drop your gun or she dies!" Cole's jaw tightened. His hand stayed on his weapon. "I said drop it!" Grayson was smiling now, seeing the opening, the weakness. "Looks like you do care about these people after all. Guess that makes you human. Also makes you predictable." Cole's mind raced through options. He could draw, shoot the men holding Sarah, but 40 other guns would fire before he finished the motion. Could try to negotiate, but Grayson's smile said negotiation time was over. Could surrender, drop his weapon, hope mercy existed in men who'd burned their way across the territory. None of them were good options. All of them ended in death. "Cole, don't!" Sarah started to say, but the gun pressed harder against her temple, cutting off words. "You've got 5 seconds, Grayson said. Then she dies, then everyone else dies, then you die last so you can watch it all happen. Your choice." 4 seconds. Cole's hand trembled. For the first time in 5 years, the legendary steady hands of Kane Montgomery shook. 3 seconds. Behind him, he heard Dr. Morrison's voice, calm despite everything. Do what you have to do, son. Don't let them use her against you. 2 seconds. Cole looked at Sarah. Saw her shaking her head, tears streaming down her face, but eyes defiant. Saw her mouth words he couldn't quite read but understood anyway. Don't give up. 1. Cole drew. Not at the men holding Sarah, not at Grayson. At the lantern hanging from the church entrance, the one that was still lit from the night watch. His bullet hit it perfect, shattered the glass, sent burning oil spraying across the men holding Sarah. They screamed, "Let go," stumbled backward, slapping at flames. Sarah dropped flat. Cole's second shot hit the dirt between Grayson's horse's front hooves. The horse reared, threw Grayson backward, sent him tumbling to the ground. The third shot hit a support beam on the overhang above where 5 of Grayson's men had taken position. The beam, already weakened by fire damage from earlier, cracked, and the whole structure came down on top of them. 3 shots. 3 impossible shots. 3 pieces removed from the board in 2 seconds. Then all hell broke loose. Grayson's men opened fire in a ragged volley, but their coordination was broken, their leader was down, and their easy victory had turned into something else entirely. Cole was already moving, diving behind the church steps, returning fire that found weapons instead of flesh. The townspeople, seeing their chance, surged forward. Not organized, not professional, but desperate and angry, and willing to die for something that mattered. They fired from windows, from doorways, from positions Cole hadn't even known about. The tide turned. Not completely. Grayson's men still had numbers, still had training, but the certainty was gone. The easy win had become a costly fight, and costly fights made people question whether the prize was worth the price. Cole saw it happening, saw riders pulling back, reassessing, saw the gang's formation fracture as individual survival instincts overrode group tactics. He pressed the advantage, firing and moving, creating chaos wherever he went. Dropped another gun, another. His hands were steady now, locked into the old rhythm, the muscle memory of violence that he'd thought was dead but had just been sleeping. Grayson climbed to his feet, his face bloody from the fall, rage making him almost inhuman. "Kill them all," he screamed. "Every last one. I want this town erased." But his men weren't listening anymore. They were breaking, scattering, some still fighting, but most just trying to survive. Cord Mattis rode up beside Grayson, his face grim. "We need to pull back, regroup. We've lost too many. We don't pull back. We don't." A bullet from somewhere, Cole couldn't see where, caught Grayson's horse. The animal screamed, went down hard. Grayson barely rolled clear, came up snarling like a wounded animal. "Fine." He pulled both his pistols, started walking toward where Cole was reloading behind the church steps. "You want to be a hero, Montgomery? Let's see how heroic you are when I put bullets in everyone you're trying to save." He fired both guns, not aimed, just spraying lead. Bullets punched through wood, shattered windows, tore chunks out of the church wall. Cole ducked low, counted shots. 4 from the left gun, 3 from the right. Both would be empty soon. Grayson kept walking, kept firing, screaming words that weren't quite coherent anymore. He'd broken, Cole realized. The carefully controlled gang leader had shattered into something raw and violent and unpredictable, which made him more dangerous. Cole waited for the pause, the moment when Grayson would have to reload, counted down in his head. 3, 2, 1. Both guns clicked empty. Cole stood, stepped into view, his gun aimed center mass. Grayson stared at him, chest heaving, eyes wild. His hands fumbled for ammunition, but his fingers weren't working right, shock and rage making them clumsy. "It's over," Cole said. "It's not over until you're dead." "Then it's never over, because you're not fast enough, smart enough, or lucky enough to kill me." Grayson's hands finally found bullets, started reloading with shaking fingers. "I'll burn this whole territory, every town, every farm, every—" "No." Cole's voice was flat, certain. "You won't. You can't stop me. You can't be everywhere. Eventually I'll win. Eventually you'll die," Cole interrupted. "Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe years from now. But it'll happen. And all this, the killing, the burning, the terror, it won't mean anything. You'll just be another corpse in a grave nobody visits, another name people forget." Grayson finished reloading, brought his guns up fast. Cole was faster. His shot hit Grayson's right hand. Not the gun, the hand. Broke bones, sent the pistol flying. Grayson screamed, grabbed his shattered hand with his left. The other gun clattered to the ground. Cole walked forward, kicked both weapons away. Stood over Grayson Black, the terror of the frontier, who was now on his knees in the dirt, clutching a hand that would never hold a gun the same way again. "I could kill you," Cole said quietly. "Should kill you, probably. Save everyone the trouble of you coming back." "Then do it," Grayson spat through pain-clenched teeth. "Prove you're the monster everyone says you are." Cole looked down at him, this man who'd killed and burned and destroyed and felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just tired recognition, like looking in a mirror that showed what he could have become if he'd kept going, kept killing, kept choosing violence until it was the only language he spoke. "No," Cole said, and holstered his gun. "I'm done proving things to people like you." He turned to walk away. Behind him, he heard scrambling, heard Grayson reaching for something. Cole spun back, saw Grayson had grabbed a derringer from his boot, was bringing it up. The shot came from the side. Frank Hastings, lying in the dirt where he'd fallen, his rifle aimed steady despite the pain. His bullet caught Grayson in the shoulder, spun him around, sent the derringer flying. "Stay down," Frank said, his voice weak but certain. "Or the next one's in your chest." Grayson stayed down. Around them, the fighting had stopped. Grayson's remaining men, less than 20 now, sat on their horses, hands raised or weapons dropped, surrounded by armed townspeople. The smell of gunpowder and blood hung thick in the air. Buildings smoldered. Bodies lay in the street, some moving, some not. The battle was over. The town had held. Cole walked to where Frank lay, helped him sit up. "You okay?" "Couple broken ribs, maybe. Legs worse. But I'm breathing." Frank looked around at the carnage, his face gray. "We won?" "Survived. Not sure it's the same thing." Dr. Morrison was already moving through the wounded, triaging, directing people to help who could be helped and comfort who couldn't. Sarah emerged from where she'd taken cover, her clothes singed from the burning oil but otherwise intact. She walked straight to Cole, looked at him for a long moment, then slapped him hard across the face. "That's for being stupid enough to stand in the street alone." Then she kissed him, quick and fierce. "And that's for being brave enough to do it anyway." Before Cole could respond, she was gone, moving to help Morrison with the wounded. Cole stood there, face stinging, lips tingling, trying to process what just happened and failing completely. "She's something else," Frank said, a weak smile on his face despite the pain. "Yeah. Oh, you know what you did here, right? What this means?" Cole looked around at the town, battered, bleeding, burning, but standing. Looked at the people who'd fought when they should have run, who'd chosen courage over survival. Looked at Grayson Black on his knees in the dirt, broken and beaten. "Means I'm not Cole Mercer anymore," he said quietly. "Can't go back to pretending after this." "Good. Mercer was boring anyway." They tied up Grayson and his men, loaded them into wagons. Some of the gang had fled during the fight, rode hard and didn't look back. The ones who stayed would face justice, whatever that meant, out here where the nearest real law was 100 miles away. The town spent the rest of the day putting out fires, tending wounded, and counting the cost. 3 dead. Tom Ridley, the young kid whose name Cole finally learned was Jacob Hess, and Mrs. Patterson, who'd survived the first attack but caught a stray bullet in the second. 11 wounded badly enough to need Morrison's attention. Dozen more with minor injuries. The cost was high, but it could have been worse. Would have been worse if they'd surrendered, if they'd run, if they'd chosen to be victims instead of fighters. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of red and gold that looked too beautiful for a day that had seen so much blood, Cole sat on the saloon steps and let himself feel it all. The exhaustion, the relief, the hollow victory that came from winning a fight that never should have happened. Sarah sat down beside him, didn't say anything, just sat there, sharing the silence. "I killed a man once," Cole said finally. "First one. I was 19, cocky, thought I was fast. He was 40, experienced, should have known better than to draw on a kid. But he was drunk and I was stupid, and we both decided our pride was worth dying for." "What happened?" "I was faster. He died in the street, bleeding out while I stood there with a smoking gun, realizing that all the practice in the world doesn't prepare you for watching a man's eyes go empty." Cole stared at his hands, steady now, always steady. "After that, it got easier. Each one made the next one simpler until I stopped thinking of them as people and started thinking of them as problems to solve. Draw, shoot, next." But you stopped. Tried to. Thought if I could just hide long enough, be quiet enough, maybe I'd become someone else. Someone better. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Turns out you can't outrun what you are. It follows you, waits for the right moment, then drags you back. Sarah took his hand, her fingers cool against his. You didn't kill anyone today. You could have. Should have, by any reasonable measure. But you didn't. Frank killed Grayson. Shot his shoulder, stopped him from shooting you. That's different than executing him in the street. Is it? Yes. She squeezed his hand. Because intent matters. Because the man who stood in that street wasn't trying to prove he was the fastest or the deadliest. He was trying to protect people. That's Kane Montgomery using his skills. That's Cole Mercer choosing who he wants to be. They're the same person. Maybe. Or maybe you're something new. Someone who's both and neither, who takes the best of each and leaves the worst behind. Cole wanted to believe that. Wanted to think that he could somehow split the difference, be the gunslinger when needed, and the bartender when not. But life didn't work that cleanly. Violence had a way of staining everything it touched, and today had done a lot of touching. What happens now? Sarah asked. Don't know. Grayson's gang is broken, but there'll be others. Always are. And word's gonna spread about what happened here, about me. Some people will come looking to test themselves against the legend. Others will avoid Whisper Ridge like it's cursed. Will you stay? Cole looked at her, really looked, saw hope in her eyes, and fear, and something else that made his chest tighten in ways that had nothing to do with bullets or violence. Do you want me to? That depends. Are you staying as Cole Mercer, the quiet bartender, or Kane Montgomery, the gunslinger? Honestly? Still figuring out which one's real. Then figure it out fast, she said, standing up, because this town needs someone, and I'd rather it be you than someone else. She walked away, leaving Cole sitting on the steps as night fell, and the stars came out, same as they always did, uncaring about human drama below. Frank limped over on a new crutch Morrison had fashioned, lowered himself carefully onto the step beside Cole. Hell of a day. Yeah. You know what I learned? What? That legends are just people who got pushed hard enough that they stopped hiding. Frank gestured at the town, at the survivors cleaning up, at the future trying to rebuild from the ruins. You could have stayed hidden, could have let us die. But you didn't, and now everyone knows what you are. That good or bad? Both. Always is. Frank was quiet for a moment, then said, I'm offering you a job, deputy marshal. Official, legal, paid position. Help me keep this town safe, train others to defend themselves, be what you are without having to hide it. I'm not a lawman. No, you're a gunslinger who decided to protect instead of destroy. That's exactly what a lawman should be. Cole thought about it. Thought about 5 years of hiding, about 2 days of fighting, about a future that could go in multiple directions depending on which path he chose. Can I think about it? Sure. Take your time. Frank struggled up, wincing. Just don't take too long. Tomorrow's got a way of showing up whether you're ready or not. He limped away, leaving Cole alone with the night and his thoughts. In the distance, thunder rumbled. Storm coming, probably. The kind that washed away blood and ash but left the scars underneath. Cole stood, walked into the saloon. Someone had cleaned it during the fight, swept up broken glass, righted overturned furniture. The bar was where he'd left it, solid and real. He poured himself a drink, raised it to the mirror. Here's to Cole Mercer, he said to his reflection. May he rest in peace. He drank. Then he poured another. And here's to Kane Montgomery. May he find it. Outside, the storm broke and rain began to fall on Whisper Ridge, washing away the evidence of violence, but not the memory. Never the memory. And somewhere in that rain, between the thunder and the silence, between Cole and Kane, between who he was and who he might become, something new was being born. Something that didn't have a name yet, but would soon. The rain fell for 3 days straight, turning the streets of Whisper Ridge into rivers of mud and regret. Cole spent most of that time in the saloon, drinking less than people expected and thinking more than he wanted to. The bodies had been buried, theirs and ours. Frank had insisted on separate plots because even dead men deserved some dignity. Grayson Black and his remaining crew sat in a makeshift jail that used to be the livery stable's tack room, waiting for a circuit judge who might show up in a month or might not show up at all. On the morning of the fourth day, the rain stopped and the sun came out like it was apologizing for being late to something important. Cole was behind the bar, going through the motions of opening, even though nobody was likely to come in this early, when the door swung open and Grayson Black walked through it. Cole's hand moved to his gun before his brain caught up, but Grayson's hands were empty, raised slightly, and he was alone. Behind him, through the open door, Cole could see Frank hobbling over on his crutch, his face urgent. "He asked to talk to you," Frank called out. "Said it was important. I told him I'd shoot him myself if he tried anything stupid." "Appreciate that," Cole said, his hand staying on his weapon. He looked at Grayson, bandaged, bruised, moving like every step cost him something. "You've got 2 minutes." Grayson limped to the bar, eased himself onto a stool. His right hand was wrapped in heavy bandages, the fingers at angles that said they'd never work quite right again. The shoulder Frank had shot was bound tight against his chest. "Whiskey," Grayson said. "You're joking." "Do I look like I'm in a joking mood?" Cole poured 2 fingers, slid it across. Grayson picked it up with his left hand, drank it in one swallow, grimaced. "That's terrible." "It's what you can afford." Grayson set down the glass, studied Cole with eyes that had lost their earlier madness but gained something harder. "I wanted to say something before they hang me." "Who says they're hanging you?" "Come on, we both know how this ends. Circuit judge shows up, takes one look at what I've done, and I'm dancing on air by sunset. If the judge even makes it that far, half this town would lynch me tonight if Frank wasn't standing guard." Cole didn't argue because Grayson was probably right. "So what do you want to say?" "That you were right." "About what?" "About all of it. The killing, the burning, the terror. It doesn't mean anything. I've spent 10 years building a reputation, making people afraid, taking what I wanted because I could. And what do I have to show for it? Broken hand, bullet holes, and a rope waiting for my neck." Grayson laughed, but it came out bitter. "You know what the funny part is?" "Tell me." "I thought I was free. Thought that because I didn't follow anyone's rules, didn't bow to any authority, I was somehow more alive than everyone else. But I was just as trapped as any of them. More, maybe. Because I couldn't stop. Every town I burned meant I had to burn another to stay feared. Every man I killed meant I had to kill more to stay on top. I was a slave to my own reputation." Cole poured himself a drink, didn't touch it, just looked at it, seeing his reflection distorted in the amber liquid. "And you," Grayson continued, "you walked away from it, had a reputation bigger than mine ever was, and you just let it die. Became nobody, hid in a place like this, poured drinks for people who didn't know your name. I thought that made you a coward." "Maybe it did." "No," Grayson shook his head. "That made you brave. Because walking away from power, from fear, from being someone everyone knows, that takes more courage than I ever had. I couldn't have done it. Would have died first. Might still. Probably, but at least I can die knowing I finally understood something." Grayson stood, moving slow and careful. "You beat me not because you're faster, though you are. You beat me because you figured out the only way to win is to stop playing, stop proving things, stop letting your past dictate your future. Just be something different. I don't know what I am yet. That's fine. Better to not know and be looking than to know and be trapped." Grayson moved toward the door, paused. "One more thing." "What?" "The men who ran during the fight. They'll scatter, find new crews, tell stories about what happened here. Some of those stories will be about how you're back, how the Phantom rides again. You ready for that?" Cole thought about it. About bounty hunters and reputation seekers. About every young gun who'd want to test themselves against the legend. About a future where peace was temporary and violence was always waiting around the next corner. "No," he admitted, "but I'll handle it when it comes." "Fair enough." Grayson smiled, and for the first time it looked genuine. "Good luck, Montgomery. Or Mercer. Whoever you decide to be." Frank escorted him back to the makeshift jail. Cole watched them go, then drank his whiskey and wondered if redemption was real or just something people told themselves to make the weight easier to carry. The circuit judge arrived 6 days later, a severe woman named Martha Blackwood, who rode in with 2 federal marshals and a disposition that suggested she'd seen every kind of human ugliness and wasn't impressed by any of it. She took one look at Grayson's remaining gang, listened to testimony from half the town, and scheduled the trial for the next morning. "This isn't complicated," she told Frank over dinner at the saloon. "They burned towns, killed civilians, terrorized the territory. The only question is whether we hang them quick or slow." "There's always mercy," Frank said carefully. Judge Blackwood looked at him over her spectacles. "Marshal Hastings, I've been riding this circuit for 15 years. I've seen what men like Grayson Black do when you show them mercy. They take it as weakness and come back twice as mean. So no, there's not always mercy. Sometimes there's just justice, and these men have earned theirs." Cole, wiping down glasses behind the bar, said nothing, but he felt the judge's eyes on him, assessing. "You're him, aren't you?" she said. "Kane Montgomery, the one they used to call the Phantom." "Used to be. But not anymore?" "Trying not to be." Judge Blackwood smiled slightly. "I remember hearing about you years back. 17 men in fair fights, they said. Never shot anyone in the back, never ambushed, never took an unfair advantage. You were as close to an honest gunslinger as this territory had." "That's not saying much." "No, but it's saying something." She took a sip of coffee, grimaced at the taste, but kept drinking. "What changed? Why'd you stop?" Cole set down the glass he'd been polishing, picked up another. "Realized that fair fights still end with someone dead, and I was tired of being the one left standing, counting bodies, and wondering if fast hands were worth the wait. So you hid. So I tried to be something else. And now? Now I'm figuring out if that's possible." The judge was quiet for a moment, then said, "I knew your father." Cole's hand stopped moving. "What?" "Joseph Montgomery. Good man, honest lawman. Died trying to bring in the Ketchum gang single-handed because he believed in doing things right even when right was suicide." She met Cole's eyes. "You look like him. Got his hands, his eyes, but you got your mother's speed, I'd wager." "Never knew my mother. She was a trick shooter with a traveling show. Could shoot playing cards out of the air, hit coins thrown in the dark. They said she was poetry with a pistol. Your father fell for her hard, she got pregnant, died giving birth to you. He raised you alone, taught you everything he knew about guns and the law." Cole sat down slowly, the glass forgotten. "How do you know all this?" "Because I worked with your father before he died. Was his first partner when I was just starting out as a deputy. He used to talk about you, about how you were faster at 12 than he'd ever been. Said you'd either become the best lawman the territory ever saw, or the most dangerous outlaw, depending on which direction your anger pushed you." Guess he got his answer. "Did he?" "Because from what I saw yesterday, you saved a town, fought against overwhelming odds, showed restraint when you could have killed, and survived to tell the tale. That sounds like a lawman to me." "I'm not my father." "No, you're better. He couldn't walk away from a fight even when he should have. You did. Then you came back when people needed you. That's wisdom he never learned." The trial the next morning was short and brutal. Judge Blackwood didn't waste time on speeches or sentiment. She heard the evidence, confirmed the crimes, and pronounced sentence. Grayson Black and 8 of his men would hang at dawn. The remaining prisoners would serve hard labor for various terms, transported to a federal facility in Colorado. The town accepted the verdict with grim satisfaction. Justice, frontier style, measured in rope and gravity. Cole sat in the saloon that night, listening to the sounds of gallows being built in the town square. Hammer strikes like a clock counting down, measuring the hours Grayson had left in a life that had been violent and wasted and somehow still human enough to regret at the end. Sarah found him there, sitting in the dark with an untouched bottle in front of him. "You going to watch?" she asked. "No." "Why not? He tried to kill you, killed people you knew." "Because I've seen enough men die. Don't need to see 8 more just to prove they deserved it." "But..." She sat down across from him, reached over and took the bottle, poured herself a drink without asking. "Judge offered you a job, federal marshal position, working under her jurisdiction." "I know," she told me. "What'd you say?" "Said I'd think about it." "That's what you said to Frank too. You planning to think forever, or eventually make a decision?" Cole smiled despite himself. "You always this pushy?" "Only when people I care about are being stubborn." She drank, winced at the taste. "This really is terrible." I keep telling people. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that only exists between people who've survived something terrible together and don't need words to fill the space. What do you want? Sarah asked finally. Not what you think you should want, not what other people expect. What do you actually want? Don't know. Spent so many years being what I was, then trying not to be it, that I never stopped to figure out what comes next. Then start. Right now. What's the first thing that comes to mind? Cole looked at her in the dim light, at this woman who'd fought when she should have hidden, who'd stood beside him when smart money would have run, saw strength and kindness and the kind of courage that didn't need a gun to be real. Peace, he said. I want peace. Want to wake up without checking if my gun's loaded. Want to pour drinks and hear boring stories and die old in a bed instead of young in the street. Then take Frank's job, be the deputy marshal, help keep this town safe so other people can have their boring stories. That's not peace. That's just organized violence. No, Sarah corrected. That's protection. Violence in service of something better. Your father understood that. Maybe it's time you did too. You sound like the judge. The judge is a smart woman. Sarah stood, moved around the table, kissed him on the forehead like a benediction. Stop running from what you are. Start deciding what you'll become. She left him there with the bottle and his thoughts, and the sound of hammers building a scaffold for men who'd chosen wrong and run out of chances to choose different. Dawn came cold and clear. Cole stood at the window of his room above the saloon, watching the square fill with people. The gallows stood stark against the sunrise, 8 nooses hanging like questions waiting for answers. He watched Grayson Black climb the steps, his movements careful because of his wounds but his head held high. Watched the other 7 follow, some crying, some praying, one laughing like he'd finally gotten the joke. Judge Blackwood read the charges and the sentences in a voice that carried across the square. Asked if anyone had final words. Grayson did. I spent my whole life taking, Grayson called out, his voice steady. Took money, took lives, took peace from people who just wanted to be left alone. Thought that made me powerful. Turned out it just made me empty. He looked around at the crowd, at the town he'd tried to destroy. Don't be like me. Don't think freedom comes from taking. Real freedom is choosing to be better than your worst instincts, even when being worse is easier. Then the lever pulled, the trapdoors opened, and 8 men fell into whatever waited beyond. Cole turned away before they stopped swinging, had seen enough death for one lifetime, didn't need to watch these too. He went downstairs, found Frank waiting at the bar. Wondered if you'd come down, Frank said. Had to eventually. Judge is leaving after breakfast. Said if you want that marshal position, you need to tell her before she rides out. Cole poured himself coffee from the pot that was always on, always burnt, drank it black and bitter, letting it ground him. What about your deputy offer? He asked. Still stands. Pays not much. Hours are terrible, and you'll probably get shot at least once a month. But the work matters, and I can't think of anyone better suited for it. Even knowing what I am? Especially knowing what you are. Frank shifted his weight, his leg clearly bothering him. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. This town's been through hell, and there'll be more hell coming. Word spreading about what happened here, about you. Some of that attention will be good. People looking for protection, honest folk wanting to settle somewhere safe. Some will be bad. Gunslingers looking to make a name, outlaws seeing if the legend is real. Either way, we need someone who can handle it. I'm one man. One man who's worth 10, maybe more. Frank reached into his coat, pulled out a silver star, set it on the bar between them. Deputy Marshal of Whisper Ridge. Job's yours if you want it. Cole stared at the badge, this small piece of metal that somehow carried the weight of a choice he'd been avoiding for years. Pick it up, and he was admitting that Kane Montgomery wasn't dead, just repurposed. Leave it there, and he was admitting that Cole Mercer was a fiction that couldn't survive contact with reality. Either way, something died. Either way, something was born. He picked up the badge. Frank's face split into a grin that looked like it hurt, but was genuine anyway. Glad to have you, Deputy. Don't be glad yet. I'm going to do this my way. Which is? No killing unless there's no other choice. No shooting first and asking questions later. We protect people, but we don't become the thing we're protecting them from. Sounds reasonable. And if it comes down to choosing between the law and what's right, I'm picking right every time. Frank's grin faded slightly. That's a dangerous philosophy. So is everything else out here. At least this way I can sleep at night. Fair enough. Frank extended his hand. Cole shook it, felt the calluses and strength of a man who'd spent his life trying to make things better, in a place that fought improvement like a disease. Cole pinned the badge to his chest, felt its weight settle like a promise he wasn't sure he could keep, but was willing to try. The judge left after breakfast, riding out with her marshals and the surviving prisoners in chains. She stopped to shake Cole's hand, saw the badge on his chest, and nodded approval. Your father would be proud, she said, or horrified. Could go either way. That's the sign of a life well lived, when even the person living it can't tell if they're succeeding or failing. She mounted her horse, gathered the reins. I'll be back through in 3 months. Try not to burn the town down before then. No promises. She rode out, dust rising behind her like the past trying to catch up, but never quite making it. Cole spent the rest of the day learning what being a deputy actually meant. Turned out it was mostly paperwork, mediating disputes between neighbors who'd been nursing grudges for years, and checking on the handful of drunks who needed watching more than arresting. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would make stories people told in saloons. Just the daily grind of keeping a town running, keeping people safe from each other and themselves. It was, Cole realized with some surprise, exactly what he'd been looking for without knowing it. That night he made his rounds, checking doors, nodding to the few people still on the streets. The town felt different now, quieter, but also more solid, like something that had been tested and found itself adequate. He found himself at the cemetery, standing in front of the 3 new graves. Tom Ridley, Jacob Hess, Mrs. Patterson. People who'd died because they'd chosen to fight instead of submit, because they'd believed their town was worth bleeding for. Hope it was worth it, Cole said to the stones. Hope we build something here that makes your dying mean something. The stones didn't answer, but then they never did. Sarah was waiting for him when he got back to the saloon, sitting at the bar with 2 cups of coffee poured. Thought you might want company, she said. Always. He sat down beside her, took the coffee, burned his tongue because he never learned to wait. How's it feel, being a lawman? Strange. Like wearing someone else's coat that almost fits but not quite. You'll grow into it. Or it'll grow into me. Either way, something's changing. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I'm staying. In case you were wondering, lots of people are talking about leaving, finding safer places. But I'm staying. Why? Because safe places are made, not found, and I'd rather help make one than go looking for one that doesn't exist. She turned to look at him, her eyes serious. Also because you're here, and I'm curious to see what kind of man you become when you stop fighting yourself. Might be disappointed. Might be. But I doubt it. She kissed him then, not quick like before, but slow and deliberate, like she was making a choice and wanted him to know it. Cole kissed back, tasting coffee and hope and the possibility of futures that didn't end in gunfire. When they broke apart, Sarah was smiling. That answer your earlier question? About what you want? Starting to. The weeks that followed settled into something that resembled normal, if normal could exist in a place where 8 men had been hanged and 3 had been buried. The town rebuilt, new barn for the Sawyers, new windows for shops that had lost theirs, new confidence in walls that had held against overwhelming odds. Cole wore the badge and learned what it meant. Broke up fights, tracked down stolen horses, arrested a claim jumper who'd thought the confusion after the battle would give him cover. Nothing dramatic, nothing that required the phantom's speed, just steady work that needed doing. He also trained people, not to be gunfighters, but to be competent, to load and clean their weapons, to shoot straight enough to matter, to understand that bravery without skill just got you killed faster. Frank watched it all from his porch, his leg healing slow, but healing, his approval evident even when he didn't say it. You're good at this, Frank said one afternoon as Cole finished drilling 6 townspeople on cover positions. At what? Teaching, leading, being someone people look to. Frank shifted his weight, wincing. When I offered you this job, I thought you'd be good muscle. Turns out you're more than that. Don't know about that. I do. And so does everyone else. Frank gestured at the town, at the people going about their lives with something like confidence. You gave them something to believe in, not the legend, not the phantom, just a man who will stand between them and the darkness. That's worth more than being fast. Cole didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. 2 months after the hanging, a rider came into town wearing a federal marshal's badge and a face that said he'd seen too much and believed too little. His name was William Cross, and he had papers from Judge Blackwood authorizing him to investigate the events surrounding Grayson Black's gang. Cole met him at the edge of town, hand resting casual on his gun because federal attention was rarely good news. "You must be Montgomery," Cross said, dismounting. "Or Mercer. Heard both names attached to you. Depends on who's asking." "Fair enough. I'm asking as someone who needs to verify whether justice was served or murder was committed." Cross pulled out a notebook, flipped it open. 8 men hanged, 3 townspeople dead, 20-some odd injuries. That's a lot of violence for a quiet town. "We didn't start it." "No, but you finished it, and the way it got finished has people asking questions." Cole felt something cold settle in his gut. What kind of questions? The kind that wonder if maybe a legendary gunslinger used a gang attack as cover to indulge old habits. The kind that ask whether Grayson Black really needed to hang, or whether someone wanted to tie up loose ends. Judge Blackwood tried and sentenced them. Everything was legal. Legal and right aren't always the same thing. Cross closed his notebook, studied Cole with eyes that had seen enough lies to recognize truth when it showed up. "I'm not here to arrest you. I'm here to determine if what happened here was self-defense or something else. You understand the difference?" "I do." "Good. Then you won't mind answering some questions." They talked for 3 hours. Cross interviewed everyone: Frank, Sarah, Dr. Morrison, townspeople who'd fought, and those who'd hidden. He examined the graves, walked the battle site, reconstructed events with the thoroughness of someone who knew that details mattered. Finally, as the sun was setting, he found Cole at the saloon. "I'm satisfied," Cross said without preamble. "What happened here was self-defense. Pure and simple. Grayson Black brought war to your door and you fought back. The trial was legitimate, the hangings were legal, and everything checks out." Cole felt tension he hadn't known he was carrying drain away. "So that's it?" "Not quite." Cross accepted the whiskey Cole poured, drank it, didn't complain about the taste. "Judge Blackwood asked me to give you something." He pulled out an envelope, set it on the bar. Cole opened it, found a letter in the judge's precise handwriting. It read, "Mr. Montgomery/Mercer. By now, Marshal Cross has completed his investigation and found what I knew he would, that you acted with honor in impossible circumstances. This letter serves as official commendation for your actions and formal offer of a position as federal marshal operating out of Whisper Ridge. The territory needs men who understand that the law is meant to protect, not punish. If you accept, report to my office in Silver City within the month. If not, wear that deputy badge well, and know you have my respect either way. Judge Martha Blackwood." Cole set down the letter, poured himself a drink. "Federal Marshal," Cross said. "That's a significant step up. More authority, more resources, more ability to make a difference. Also more politics, more compromise, more serving a system that doesn't always serve the people who need it most. True. But it's also a chance to change that system from inside. Your father tried to do it as a local lawman and died for it. You could do it with federal backing and actually succeed." Cole looked at the badge on his chest, the deputy star that Frank had given him. Thought about promises made and kept, about a town that had trusted him enough to fight, about Sarah waiting for him to decide who he wanted to be. "Tell the judge I appreciate the offer," Cole said slowly, "but I'm staying here. Whisper Ridge needs a deputy, and I need to finish what we started." Cross nodded like he'd expected that answer. "She'll understand. Might even respect you more for it." He stood, dropped coins on the bar for the drink. "Good luck, deputy. Something tells me you're going to need it." He left. The saloon settled back into its familiar quiet, broken only by the sound of Cole pouring one more drink and not drinking it, just watching the light play through amber while he thought about roads not taken and choices that defined you whether you wanted them to or not. Frank found him there an hour later. "Heard you turned down the federal job," Frank said. "News travels fast." "Small town. Everything travels fast." Frank eased onto a stool, his leg still bothering him, but better than it had been. "Why'd you say no?" "Because I spent 5 years running from my reputation, and I'm tired of running. Rather stand still, make a difference in one place than chase glory across the whole territory. Noble, stupid, but noble." "Story of my life." Frank laughed, called for a drink. Cole poured one for himself. They sat there in the growing dark, two lawmen in a town that barely needed them but kept them anyway, drinking terrible whiskey and not talking about the weight they both carried. Outside, Whisper Ridge continued its slow recovery. Tomorrow there'd be more work, more disputes to settle, more training to conduct, more of the daily grind that was law enforcement in a place where civilization was an idea people were still testing. But tonight, there was just this: 2 men, a bar, and the understanding that sometimes the hardest thing wasn't fighting. It was choosing to stop. The badge on Cole's chest caught lamplight, gleaming dull silver against dark cloth. It didn't make him good, didn't erase 17 dead men or 5 years of hiding. But it was something, a direction, a choice. And choice, Cole was learning, was the only freedom that mattered. 3 months passed like water finding its level, settling into the cracks and valleys of daily life, until Whisper Ridge felt less like a battleground and more like a place where people actually lived. Cole wore the deputy badge and learned that most of law enforcement was preventing trouble rather than shooting your way out of it. He mediated disputes over fence lines and water rights, broke up the occasional fistfight outside the saloon, and spent more time talking than drawing. It was boring. It was exactly what he needed. But the past had a way of finding you even when you thought you'd outrun it. And on a Tuesday morning in late October, it rode into town wearing a familiar face. Cole was helping Mrs. Chen repair her henhouse. A fox had gotten in overnight and created havoc, when he heard the horse. Something about the rhythm made him look up, made his hand drift toward his gun before his brain caught up. The rider was young, maybe 19, with the kind of face that hadn't learned yet how hard the world could hit. He wore 2 guns slung low, positioning that screamed amateur trying to look professional. His eyes found Cole across the distance, and something like recognition flickered there. Cole finished nailing the board, thanked Mrs. Chen, and walked to meet the rider in the street. Behind him, he heard windows closing, doors locking. The town had learned to read trouble, and this kid radiated it like heat off summer stone. "Can I help you?" Cole asked, keeping his voice neutral, his hands visible. The kid dismounted, his movements too quick, too eager. Up close, Cole could see the fear underneath the bravado, the way his hands trembled slightly before he forced them still. "You're him, right? Kane Montgomery. The Phantom." "I'm Cole Mercer, Deputy Marshal of Whisper Ridge." "Don't lie to me. I know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. Fastest draw west of anywhere, killed 17 men in fair fights, disappeared for 5 years and came back to slaughter Grayson Black's entire gang." "I didn't slaughter anyone. And Black was hanged by legal authority after a fair trial." "Doesn't matter." The kid's voice was rising, adrenaline overriding common sense. "You're the legend, and I'm here to find out if the legend's real or just another story old men tell to feel important." Cole sighed. He'd known this was coming, had been waiting for it since the day he'd pinned on the badge. Word traveled, and legends attracted the kind of attention that usually ended in blood. "What's your name, son?" "Don't call me son. My name's Danny Hollister, and I'm calling you out." "No, you're not." "The hell I'm not. I've been practicing for 2 years ever since I heard you were still alive. I'm fast, faster than anyone in 3 territories, and I'm going to prove it by beating the Phantom." Cole looked at this kid who thought speed was the same as skill, who'd probably never fired at a man who could fire back, who was about to throw his life away for a reputation that meant nothing. "Danny," Cole said quietly, "you don't want to do this. You're scared. The Great Phantom is scared of some kid from nowhere." "No, I'm tired. There's a difference." Cole unbuckled his gun belt, let it fall to the ground. "See? No gun. You win. Go tell everyone you faced down the Phantom, and he backed down. Story ends, you live, everyone goes home." Danny stared at the gun on the ground, confusion warring with anger on his young face. "Pick it up. No. Pick it up, or I'll shoot you where you stand. Then you'll hang for murder. I'm a deputy marshal, unarmed, and you'll have witnesses." Cole gestured at the windows where faces were watching, at Frank, who'd appeared on the porch of his office, rifle in hand but not raised, that the story you want told about you, that you shot an unarmed man? You're trying to trick me. I'm trying to save your life. Because if I pick up that gun, if we do this the way you want, you're going to die. Not because I'm faster, though I am, but because you're not ready. You've practiced against targets and maybe some friends who didn't shoot back. But you've never stood across from someone who's done this for real, who's watched men die and had to live with it. And that difference, that experience, is what'll kill you. Danny's hand hovered over his gun, trembling now not from fear but from indecision. Everyone said you were a coward, said you ran away, hid like a scared rabbit. Prove them wrong. Prove you're still the Phantom. I don't need to prove anything. Not to you, not to anyone. Cole met the kid's eyes, saw desperation there, saw a boy trying to be a man the only way he knew how. But I'll tell you what, you want to test yourself? Want to know if you're fast? There's a bottle on that fence post over there. Draw and shoot it. If you hit it, maybe we'll talk about your skills. If you miss, you ride out of here and find a different dream. It was a gamble. If the kid was actually good, if he hit the bottle, the situation would escalate. But Cole was betting on inexperience, on pressure doing what it always did, making hands shake and aim go wild. Danny turned, faced the fence post 50 feet away. The bottle sat there, glass catching sunlight, an easy target for anyone with basic skills. The kid drew, fast, faster than Cole expected. The gun cleared leather smooth, came up level, fired. The bullet hit the fence post 6 inches left of the bottle. Danny stared at his miss, at the smoking gun in his hand, at the evidence that he wasn't as good as he thought. His face went through several emotions, shock, anger, shame, before settling on something that looked like relief. I practiced, he said, his voice small. Practiced every day for 2 years. I was sure I was ready. Practicing and doing are different countries, Cole said, and the border between them is drawn in blood. Danny holstered his gun slowly, his hands shaking for real now. What do I do now? I came here to make a name, to be someone. You are someone. You're Danny Hollister, and you're alive, which means you've got time to become whoever you want. But it doesn't have to be a gunfighter. There's other ways to matter. Like what? Cole picked up his gun belt, strapped it back on. Like being a man who builds instead of destroys, who protects instead of threatens, who makes the world a little less terrible instead of adding to the pile. He gestured at the town, at the rebuilding and the hope. We could use help here. Town's growing, needs people willing to work. Pay's not great, but you'd be part of something that matters. Danny looked around, seeing Whisper Ridge for the first time as something other than a backdrop for his legend. You're offering me a job? Offering you a choice. Take it or leave it. But either way, the gunfighter dream ends here. You want to be fast? Fine. Be fast with a hammer or a plow or anything that builds. But this, Cole touched his gun, this road only goes one direction, and the destination's always the same. The kid stood there for a long moment, weighing futures. Then he nodded slowly. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. There's a boarding house 2 streets over. Mrs. Patterson's daughter runs it now. Tell her I sent you, she'll give you a fair rate while you figure things out. Danny mounted his horse, but he didn't ride out. Instead, he looked down at Cole with eyes that were starting to see past the legend to the man underneath. Why'd you help me? I came here to kill you. Because someone helped me once, gave me a chance to be better than my worst choice, figured I'd pass it along. The kid rode off toward the boarding house, and Cole watched him go, hoping it would stick, but knowing sometimes people needed to learn lessons the hard way. Sarah appeared at his elbow, materialized the way she did when she'd been watching from somewhere he couldn't see. That was kind. That was selfish. One less person trying to kill me means one less thing to lose sleep over. You can pretend it's selfish all you want. I know better. She took his arm, a gesture that had become familiar over the past months, comfortable in a way that scared and settled him at the same time. You're getting good at this. The talking instead of shooting. Had a good teacher. I don't recall teaching you anything. You taught me that being alive is better than being right. That's worth more than any fast draw. They walked together back toward the saloon, passing people who nodded greetings, who'd stopped seeing him as a threat and started seeing him as part of the landscape. It felt strange. It felt right. Frank met them at the office. His leg finally healed enough that the crutch was optional instead of mandatory. Handled that well. The old you would have just shot him. The old me was an idiot. The old you kept people alive through fear. The new you keeps them alive through wisdom. I'll take the second option. Frank shuffled papers on his desk, pulled out a telegram. This came in this morning, from Judge Blackwood. Cole took it, read, "Wire when convenient stop have matter requiring your particular skills. Stop, not federal business, but personal. Stop will compensate. Stop Blackwood." Personal matter, Cole said. Wonder what that means. Only one way to find out. Silver City's 3 days' ride. You're overdue for time away from here anyway. Let you clear your head. Remember, there's more to the world than this town. You trying to get rid of me? I'm trying to keep you from going stale. Even deputies need to stretch their legs sometimes. Cole looked at Sarah, who shrugged. He's right. Go see what the judge wants. I'll keep an eye on things here. Make sure Danny doesn't work up the courage to try again. You think he will? No. I think he saw something in you that scared him more than your speed. He saw someone who walked away from the life he wanted, and it made him question whether the life was worth having. Cole left the next morning, riding the same roan mare who'd carried him to Rollins and back. The journey to Silver City was uneventful. Late October weather, cool but not cold, the kind of riding where you could let your mind wander without worrying about freezing or frying. He thought about the past 3 months, about the routine and the boredom, and the strange satisfaction that came from helping Mrs. Chen fix her henhouse or breaking up a fight between two drunks arguing over a card game. About Sarah and the way she looked at him like he was someone worth looking at. About Frank's steady presence, the kind of partnership that didn't need constant talking to work. He thought about Kane Montgomery and Cole Mercer, these two names that had somehow merged into something new. Not quite either one, but not completely different. Just a man trying to figure out how to carry his past without letting it crush his future. Silver City was bigger than Whisper Ridge, a real town with paved streets and gas lamps, and the kind of infrastructure that came from money and planning. Judge Blackwood's office was in the Federal Building, a 2-story affair that tried to look impressive and mostly succeeded. She was waiting for him in her chambers, papers spread across a desk that had probably been expensive once and was now just functional. She looked older than she had 3 months ago, more tired. "Deputy Mercer," she said, standing to shake his hand. "Thank you for coming." The telegram said personal matter. "Judge, if this is about me testifying in some trial, it's not." She gestured for him to sit, poured 2 cups of coffee from a pot that looked like it had been sitting there since morning. "It's about my son." Cole hadn't known the judge had a son. Then again, he didn't know much about her beyond her reputation for hard justice and harder coffee. "His name is Thomas. He's 23, smart, idealistic, convinced he can change the world through law and reason." She smiled sadly. "Reminds me of his father, who died believing the same thing and left me to raise a boy who inherited his best and worst qualities." What's he done? Gotten himself involved with the wrong people. There's a town called Redemption, about 60 miles west of here. Rough place, run by a man named Silas Crane, who controls everything, law, business, even the church. Thomas went there 3 weeks ago to investigate claims of corruption and disappeared. Cole set down his coffee cup. Disappeared how? No body, no ransom note, no word. Just gone. I've sent federal marshals to investigate, but Crane's clever. He covers his tracks, intimidates witnesses, makes everything look legal even when it's not. She met Cole's eyes, and he saw something he'd never seen there before. Fear. I can't go myself. The moment I show up, it becomes federal business, and Crane will bury everything deeper. But you're just a deputy from a small town. You could ask questions, look around, maybe find what happened to my son. Judge, I'm not an investigator. I'm barely a lawman. No, you're a man who sees through lies and doesn't back down from powerful people. That's exactly what I need. She pulled a photograph from her desk, handed it over. A young man with kind eyes and his mother's determined jaw stared back at Cole. Please, I've built a career on being impartial, on not letting personal feelings influence my decisions. But this is my son, and I'm asking as a mother, not a judge. Cole studied the photograph. seeing hope and intelligence in a face that probably smiled more than the image captured. Thought about what he'd do if Sarah went missing, if Frank disappeared and nobody cared because caring was inconvenient. "I'll go," he said, "but I can't promise I'll find him alive." "I know, but not knowing is worse than any answer you could bring back." He rode out the next morning, heading west toward redemption with directions and a photograph and the weight of a mother's hope pressing down like accumulated gravity. Redemption announced itself 10 miles out, with signs advertising itself as a new start for honest folk, and where sinners find purpose. The closer Cole got, the more the signs appeared, like breadcrumbs leading to something that wanted very badly to be found. The town itself was larger than Whisper Ridge, maybe 300 people, with a main street that was actually planned instead of just evolved. Everything looked clean, organized, almost too perfect, like a stage set waiting for actors to bring it to life. Cole rode in at midday, drawing looks but not alarm. He tied his horse outside what called itself the Second Chance Saloon, and walked in to find it empty except for a bartender who looked like he'd been carved from the same wood as the bar. "Help you?" the bartender asked. "Looking for information. Man named Thomas Blackwood came through here a few weeks back. Anyone see him?" "Don't recall the name. Young man, early 20s, probably asking questions about local governance and law enforcement." "Lots of people come through asking questions. Can't remember them all." Cole studied the bartender's face, saw the careful blankness that came from practicing lies until they looked like truth. "He's the judge's son, federal judge. The kind of judge who remembers slights and has resources to address them." Something flickered in the bartender's eyes. "Might want to talk to Silas Crane. He runs things here, knows everyone's business." "Where do I find him?" "He'll find you. Always does." Cole ordered a whiskey. It was better than the rot he served in Whisper Ridge, which told him something about the town's priorities, and waited. Sure enough, 20 minutes later, a man walked in who radiated authority the way some men radiated heat. Silas Crane was 50-something, well-dressed, with the kind of face that could sell you salvation and steal your wallet in the same conversation. Two men flanked him, guns visible but not drawn, positioning that said muscle without needing to demonstrate. "Deputy Mercer," Crane said, extending a hand. "Welcome to Redemption. Word travels fast about visitors, especially ones wearing badges from other jurisdictions." Cole shook the offered hand, felt strength there, but also calculation. "Mr. Crane, I'm looking for someone. Thomas Blackwood. Any chance you've seen him?" "Ah, the judge's son. Tragic situation. He came through here asking questions about irregularities in land sales, accusations that I'd intimidated homesteaders into selling for less than fair value. Completely unfounded, of course." "Of course. Where's he now?" "Don't know. He asked his questions, I answered them honestly, and he left. Haven't seen him since." Crane signaled the bartender for drinks. "I run a clean town here, deputy. We've got rules, we enforce them, and everyone benefits from the order. Young Mr. Blackwood seemed to think rules were optional if you were fighting for a good cause." "And what cause was that?" "Justice," he called it. Sounded more like self-righteousness to me. He accused me of stealing land from people who couldn't fight back, of using legal mechanisms to rob honest folk. All lies, of course, but lies from a federal judge's son carry weight. Cole sipped his whiskey, watching Crane's face for tells. "So he just left? Didn't file any reports? Didn't send word to his mother?" "Not my concern what he did after he left my town. Maybe he found evidence elsewhere. Maybe he realized his accusations were baseless and decided to slink home. Maybe he had an accident on the road. The frontier's dangerous for idealistic young men who think good intentions make them bulletproof." The threat was subtle but clear. Cole set down his glass. "I'd like to look around, talk to some people. That going to be a problem?" "Not at all. We've got nothing to hide." "But deputy, a word of advice. Redemption takes care of its own. We don't take kindly to outsiders suggesting we're anything less than lawful. Your badge doesn't carry weight here beyond basic courtesy." "Understood. And Mr. Crane, a word of advice in return. That boy's mother is a federal judge with connections that make your operation here look like a children's game. He turns up dead, and this town becomes the most investigated place in 3 territories. So if you know something, now's the time to share it." Crane's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. "Are you threatening me, deputy?" Just stating facts. Threats are more direct. I'll keep that in mind. Crane stood, his muscle moving with him. Enjoy your stay in redemption. Don't stay too long. They left. Cole sat alone in the saloon, thinking about threats wrapped in courtesy and towns that were too clean to be honest. He spent the next 2 days asking questions and hitting walls. Nobody remembered Thomas Blackwood. Nobody had seen anything unusual. Nobody wanted to talk to the deputy from out of town who was stirring up trouble. But Cole had spent 5 years watching people, learning to read the spaces between words. And what he read here was fear. Not the fear of violence, the fear of losing something, of being cast out, of having whatever stability they'd found taken away. On the third day, he found the crack. Her name was Emma, a widow who ran a boarding house on the edge of town. She answered his knock with eyes that had seen too much and a mouth that had learned to stay shut. "Mrs. Emma, I'm deputy. I know who you are. Everyone knows. You need to leave. I'm just looking for a missing young man, Thomas Blackwood. If you've seen him, I said leave." But her eyes flicked to the side toward a root cellar door half hidden behind stacked firewood. Cole caught it, filed it away. "Thank you for your time, ma'am." He left, walked back to the saloon, made a show of drinking and looking defeated. Let the watchers see him give up. Then, after dark, he circled back to Emma's boarding house and knocked again. She opened the door a crack, her face pale in lantern light. "You shouldn't be here." "I know, but that cellar you looked at earlier, what's in it?" "Please, they'll kill me if they find out I talked." "Who's they?" "Crane's men. They watch everything, know everything. This town isn't what it looks like from outside." "Then help me change it. Tell me what happened to Thomas Blackwood." She hesitated, fear and conscience warring. Finally, conscience won by a narrow margin. "He's alive. In the cellar. Crane's holding him until the judge backs off her investigation into land fraud. He's using the boy as leverage." Cole felt relief followed immediately by anger. "How long's he been down there?" 3 weeks. They feed him, keep him healthy enough. But Crane says if federal marshals show up officially, if the judge tries anything formal, the boy disappears for real. Take me to him." "I can't. You already talked. Already crossed the line. Might as well finish it." She led him around back, moved the firewood with shaking hands, opened the cellar door. Cole descended into darkness that smelled like earth and fear. Thomas Blackwood sat in the corner, chained to a support beam, dirty and thin but alive. His eyes widened when he saw Cole, hope and suspicion mixing. "Who are you?" "Cole Mercer. Your mother sent me." Cole knelt, examined the chain, heavy but not impossible. "You hurt?" "No, just stuck. Crane says he'll let me go when my mother drops her investigation." "That's not happening, and neither is you staying here." The Cole pulled his gun, shot the chain where it connected to the beam. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. "They'll hear that," Emma gasped from above. "I'm counting on it." Cole helped Thomas up, supported his weight as they climbed out of the cellar. "Emma, get inside and lock your doors. Don't open them for anyone until morning." She ran. Cole and Thomas made it halfway to Cole's horse before Crane's men appeared. 6 of them, guns drawn, blocking the street. "That's town property you're stealing, deputy," one called out. "Put him down and maybe we'll let you ride out." "He's not property. He's a person. And I'm taking him home." "Your choice. Your funeral." They drew. Cole had known this was coming, had felt it building since he'd arrived in Redemption. Part of him, the part that was still Kane Montgomery, had almost been looking forward to it. One last dance, one final proof that speed mattered. His gun cleared leather faster than thought, faster than should be possible. 6 shots in rapid sequence, so close together they sounded like a drum roll. 6 guns flew from 6 hands, spinning away into the darkness. Nobody died. Cole holstered his gun, supported Thomas with his other arm. "Anyone else want to try? Or can I leave with Judge Blackwood's son without more stupidity?" Silence. The men stared at their empty hands, at the impossible shooting they'd just witnessed, and whatever courage they'd had evaporated. Tell Crane that Thomas is going home. Tell him the judge knows everything, that federal marshals will be here within a week, and that if he's smart, he'll run. Tell him the age of men like him is ending, and towns like this are either going to change or disappear. He got Thomas mounted, climbed up behind him, and rode out of Redemption under the stars. They made it 5 miles before Thomas spoke. "You're him, aren't you? The Phantom, the fastest gun in—" "I'm a deputy marshal who got lucky. That's all." "That wasn't luck. That was impossible. Lots of impossible things turn out to be real when you need them bad enough." Cole adjusted his grip, keeping Thomas steady in the saddle. "Your mother's worried sick. You should have sent word." "I tried. Crane intercepted everything. I thought I was being smart, investigating corruption. Turned out I was just naive." "Naive isn't the same as wrong. Crane is corrupt. The land fraud is real. You just went about proving it the wrong way." "What's the right way?" "Living long enough to fight another day. Can't change the world if you're dead or chained in a cellar." They rode through the night, putting distance between themselves and redemption. When dawn came, Thomas was asleep against Cole's back, exhausted from weeks of captivity and the adrenaline crash of escape. Cole watched the sunrise and thought about towns that hid their darkness behind false cleanliness, about men like Crane who wrapped cruelty in the language of order. Thought about how easy it would have been to kill those 6 men instead of disarming them, how the old him wouldn't have hesitated. But he'd hesitated, had chosen the harder path, and Thomas Blackwood was alive because of it. They reached Silver City 2 days later. Judge Blackwood met them at the edge of town, having received Cole's telegram from a way station. She pulled Thomas from the horse and held him like she'd never let go, tears streaming down a face that had probably forgotten how to cry in public. "Thank you," she said to Cole when she could finally speak. "I owe you everything." "You owe me nothing. Just do what you do best. Bring justice to redemption. Make sure Crane faces consequences for what he's done." "It's already in motion. The moment I got your telegram, I sent federal marshals. They'll clean out that town top to bottom." "Good. It needs cleaning." She released Thomas finally, turned to face Cole fully. "What you did, disarming 6 men instead of killing them, that took more skill and courage than any gunfight I've ever heard of. That took being tired of death. Different thing. No, that took being the man your father would have wanted you to become." She extended her hand. "If you ever want that federal marshal position, it's yours. No questions, no strings." Cole shook her hand. "Appreciate it, Judge. But I've got a town that needs me, and people I don't want to leave." He rode back to Whisper Ridge with a lighter heart than he'd had in years. The territory was changing. He could feel it. Men like Crane were being pushed out by people like Judge Blackwood. The old ways, the violence, the corruption, the rule by fear, were giving ground to something newer, maybe even better. It wouldn't be perfect, nothing ever was, but it was moving in the right direction, and that was enough. Whisper Ridge appeared on the horizon as the sun was setting, painting the buildings in gold and shadow. Cole saw the new construction, more houses, a proper schoolhouse, a church that was actually finished instead of perpetually under repair. Saw smoke rising from chimneys, heard the distant sound of a hammer, or maybe children playing. Saw home. Sarah was waiting on the porch of the saloon like she'd known exactly when he'd arrive. She stood as he dismounted, walked to him, took his face in her hands. "You came back." "Said I would." "People say lots of things. Doesn't mean they follow through." "I'm trying to be someone who follows through." She kissed him then, soft and certain, a promise that went both ways. Frank appeared from his office, moving without the crutch now, his leg finally healed. "Heard you saved a judge's son and disarmed 6 men without killing any of them. That true?" "More or less." "Then you're getting better at this, or worse, depending on how you measure." "Measure by people alive at the end. Seems like the only metric that matters." They walked inside together, Cole, Sarah, Frank, into the saloon that had been his hiding place and was now his home. Danny Hollister was there, working behind the bar, polishing glasses with careful attention. He'd taken the job, had spent the past week learning that pouring drinks was harder than it looked. "Deputy," Danny said, straightening, "heard about what you did in Redemption. News travels. Made me think. About what you said. About building instead of destroying." He gestured at the bar, at the town beyond. "This is building. Might not be glamorous, but it matters to the people who come in here looking for a drink and conversation. It does matter, and you're good at it. Keep at it." The saloon filled slowly as evening settled. Townspeople coming in for their nightly rituals, telling stories and sharing grievances and building the web of connection that made a place more than just buildings. Cole stood behind this bar beside Danny, pouring drinks and listening to conversations, and felt something he'd thought was lost forever settle into his chest. Peace. Not the peace of absence, not the quiet of hiding, the peace of finding where you fit, of being useful, of making a difference in small ways that accumulated into something larger. Sarah sidled up to the bar, ordered coffee. "What are you thinking about?" "About how I spent 5 years trying to be nobody and 3 months learning to be somebody different, and how the second one's harder, but better." "You gonna stay? Really stay, not just until the next crisis or the next call for help?" "Yeah, I'm staying. This is home now." "Good." She smiled and it lit up the whole room. "Because I'm not going anywhere, and it'd be nice to have you around while I'm here." Frank raised his glass from a corner table. "To Deputy Mercer, may he continue to shoot guns instead of people, and may the rest of us have the good sense to appreciate it." The saloon echoed the toast, glasses rising, voices mixing. Cole raised his own glass, caught his reflection in the mirror behind the bar. The face looking back wasn't Kane Montgomery anymore. Wasn't quite Cole Mercer either. It was something new, something still being defined by daily choices and small acts of courage. It was enough. Outside, the sun finished setting and stars emerged one by one, constant and uncaring and beautiful. The frontier was changing, civilization creeping forward in fits and starts, bringing law and order and the possibility that maybe people didn't have to be defined by how fast they could kill. Whisper Ridge stood at that edge, a town that had faced darkness and chosen light, that had fought for its right to exist and won against odds that should have crushed it. And in the saloon at the center of it all, Cole poured drinks and listened to stories and wore a badge that meant he'd chosen to protect instead of destroy. The gun at his hip was still there, still loaded, still ready. He was still fast, still capable of everything he'd been before. But now speed was a tool instead of an identity, violence was the last resort instead of the first choice, and every day he didn't draw was a victory worth celebrating. Danny asked a question about inventory. Sarah laughed at something Frank said. Someone started singing, badly but enthusiastically. The familiar sounds of life continuing, of a town that had survived and was learning to thrive. Cole Mercer, not quite the quiet bartender anymore, not quite the legendary gunslinger, but something in between, poured another drink, wiped down the bar, and smiled. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. And that was enough.